On peut mettre l'écran sur le président, s'il vous plaît? Merci.
I would like to welcome body. I understand that we have the quorum, but I'm just double checking. I think yes. Welcome back. We are going to start where we end off this morning. We are going to start when I wind up this morning. We left that at the beginning of this afternoon. We are going to continue with the list of speakers for item 2. Following item 2, when we conclude the discussions, we will go to item 3 and then item 4 to conclude it. I have to remind everybody that we have until 6:30 maybe with the interpreters. We still have a lot to go, and therefore I can give only 2 minutes. I'm asking the Secretariat to set the clock 2 minutes because the list is very long and we want to give the floor to everybody. Now I start with the Republic of Korea, please, sir. The Republic of Korea, are you with us, please? No. Don't put it.
Okay. Yes. So thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Good afternoon. I would like to thank this for their tremendous efforts toward consensus. In the morning session, we saw an influx of interventions with point of orders as well as on substantive matters. This means we are participating in the 6th special session in a resolute manner to achieve something. So I think the matter before us is not a question about our commitment to continuity of UNESCO's work. It is a question about which way is more efficient and effective, a matter of technicality to be decided on the time constraints. There are different options for consensus on the table for our choice. There's the Group of Africa's proposal, and then there's the default option of adopting the Secretariat's submission document 6XEX2. At this point, we do not know whether the conducting in presential meetings of the 209th session in the customary way would be possible or not. Therefore, the board needs to be prepared for the contingency that the 209th session might have to be held virtually, whether in part or entirely or in a hybrid format as both physical and virtual meetings. Because we did not have sufficient time to examine the proposal attached to the facilitator's informal text, we need more time to study the proposal more carefully. My delegation supports establishing an open-ended intersectional working group, which should continue to work to find or modus operandi, taking the document 6xEX2 as the basis of the discussions, and taking into account the development in the coming weeks and months, including the host country's sanitary policy measures, the working group can submit recommendations to a 9th session if it is to be virtually held, or to 10th session for future use if to a 9th session is to be held in presential. The 6th special session has demonstrated to us how generally daunting it is to conduct meetings virtually. Still, the EXB needs to maintain our principle of consensus, whether in virtual meetings or in physical meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you. I keep reminding, we have the 2 minutes. I give the floor now to Pakistan, please. Pakistan is not connected. We'll come back. Cuba? Cuba is not connected. I'm not going to jump the list. I will go by what I have approved this morning. Grenada was the next. You just have to tell me whether it's not connected, then I will go to the next. Connected. Good. Grenada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My delegation would like to recognize the work of the facilitators and agree with the position of St. Lucia, Turkey, Egypt, Venezuela, Kenya, and others on the importance of adapting the existing rules to allow the Executive Board to fulfill its mandate and play its role during this crisis period. This is the reason why we support the facilitator text, which includes the African Group proposal and was submitted officially and circulated to all member states. Mr. Chairman, UNESCO is the only UN organization with a mandate of building knowledge societies. UNESCO is expected to give advice to governments on how they can develop policies to integrate ICTs for development, and it deals with issues related to artificial intelligence. While we are not able to equip ourselves with adaptation rules for using ICTs to fulfill the Executive Board's governance mandate. This is very disturbing and worrying. This is why my delegation hopes to see this special session agreeing on the adaptation of the existing rules of procedure to allow the Executive Board to be able to function, and then to consider and discuss the substantive issues, namely the impact of COVID-19 on the organization's program and the report of the Director General. And even if we hope that according to the information document EX4, the 2009 session could take place in person, we still need to adapt our rules of procedure to virtual meetings, because nothing is certain and everything will depend on the sanitary ground in the host country and in the member states. Therefore, we concur with St. Lucia's intervention this morning that we have to do our best to agree on the methods of work before moving to other items. I thank you.
Albania, thank you. Following Albania, I will come back to Pakistan and Cuba. For now, Albania, you have the floor, please. Not connected. Is Pakistan connected, please? Yes. Pakistan.
Good morning, Mr. President, Excellencies, and dear colleagues. Good afternoon. Pakistan would like to echo what has eloquently been said by Bangladesh and St. Lucia and others who wish to adapt the current rules of procedure to a virtual session. We agree in principle to the African Group position, which was a good document to start with, but was not on the agenda of the Executive Board as such. However, it was a document prepared to assist the facilitators and their work according to their mandate. Besides, the African Group document, as far as we have understood it, does not contradict what is already provided in Annexure 1 of the facilitators' draft document circulated during the 3 rounds of consultations. Accordingly, we can start with draft decision 6XEX/2 and modify it by inputs from different delegations, especially the Kenyan and Ethiopian delegations. The table provided in 6XEX/2 addendum can also be modified to achieve consensus. We believe that the Executive Board, as the decision-making body of UNESCO, must be equipped with the requisite tools should it desire to meet virtually in special sessions or regular sessions. UNESCO should be able to respond effectively to every crisis situation now and in future, not just the COVID-19. UNESCO decisions in crisis-like situations should be taken with the approval of Executive Board. The Executive Board should meet in presentia whenever possible, but should not be hesitant to meet virtually in regular sessions should circumstances so require. Initially, we will witness problems like now, but we will evolve by improving. Likewise, we must be prepared for novel problems should the 209th session be held in presentia, as our Turkish colleague has very rightly pointed out. We believe we need to adapt the existing rules of procedure to virtual sessions, and we are in favor of Annexures 1 and 2 and the African version. And we need to proceed on the draft decision EX/2, and we need to generate consensus during this session. In the end, we would like to thank you, Mr. President, as well as the facilitators for the persistent efforts in organizing this session by addressing all kinds of legal and technical issues, and we pledge our delegation's full support in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Cuba?
Oui. Oui, vous m'écoutez, Monsieur le Président?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chair, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes? I can't hear you. I could, but I can't hear you anymore. Can you go on? Go ahead, Cuba. I can no longer hear Cuba. I think that we're going to have to come back to you, Cuba.
Okay, Albania can log in while we are trying to come back to Cuba. Albania, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it is important that we avoid to unintentionally give the impression that some delegations want to have a decision, some don't. This would be totally incorrect. The only question here is how, in which way, under which rules, and that's really the clarity that we have been seeking throughout the session. This is why I anticipated those questions yesterday at the beginning of the debate. Several delegations yesterday and today, among them France, Poland, Finland, Italy, Germany, and maybe many others more, have indicated several problematic issues. We cannot ignore them. Many of us had clearly indicated, and you said it yourself repeatedly today, that there is so much one can do virtually. And indeed, let's accept it. Virtually, we can listen to each other, even though sometimes barely and sometimes not at all, as we witness. We can listen to exposés, to information sharing, but we cannot have a real, normal, and meaningful debate and drafting exercise. It is simply impossible, and any attempt to really go that way would be a dead end, and we would be losing our time. So, Mr. Chairman, let me hope that we may have learned something as a lesson from for any virtual exercise of the future, that when decision-making process is involved, we need to take time, much more time, to do the drafting exercise before the formal session, as we attempted in the last weeks, as it normally happens actually in the UN organizations, which were mentioned many, many times, and then leave more time to discussion. Therefore, as a conclusion, I would say that under the current situation, since we have a very good basis, thanks to numerous valuable proposals, but still incomplete and still yet not in agreement after these 2 days, I would propose the following. First, we approve the draft decision of the Secretariat as proposed. Then we adopt either a very short draft decision on the creation of the intersession open-ended working group, or as a third paragraph to the draft proposal by the Secretariat. In case that we know and we are sure that the next session will happen in presentia. If we are not sure, and if there are doubts, and probably if we will have a 2009 session virtually, we will need to do something, and probably we could agree to remandate the facilitators to continue their informal efforts to reaching consensus, and on that basis present a draft decision for discussion if it's not agreed before, or adoption at the beginning of next session of the board if consensus has been built. But of course, this is only if we will be faced with the necessity of having the 2009 session in a virtual mode. Otherwise, we need to take more time, because we will have time until the 210th session. This is what I wanted to share, and I thank you.
Thank you. Can we go to Cuba now? Cuba? After Cuba, it will...
Ensuite, ce sera Sainte-Lucie et ensuite les Émirats arabes unis. Est-ce que nous pouvons entendre le délégué de Cuba maintenant? Oui. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Good. Good. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon. Go ahead. I have problems with the video image, but no, but we can hear you fine, even if we can't see you. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank you. Since this is the first time I'm taking the floor here, I would like to thank you and thank the facilitators for the efforts they've made to achieve a consensus. I think that today we are in a better situation thanks to the work carried out by the delegation of Switzerland and Morocco in order to study the modalities of a virtual session and to ensure good governance in a time of crisis, and particularly the crisis brought about by COVID-19. That's an important challenge, to ensure our participation in a virtual meeting of the Executive Board, because the technical obstacles are considerable. Yesterday it was almost impossible for us to connect from Cuba, from Havana. Representatives come from the capitals, and Interprefy, it was blocked in Cuba. This is just confirmed. Cuba is blocked out of Cuba. We cannot use it. We have to use a VPN in order to take part in the meeting. So other decisions concerning virtual meetings, well, the technicians have to provide a platform that would enable all the member states to have access on an equal footing. We have to privilege face-to-face physical meetings. So Cuba will firmly support the next Executive Board meeting being physical, to ensure the participation of the delegations that are housed in Paris. Now, when it comes to virtual meetings, we are really in favor of achieving a consensus, but we have a lot of serious concerns on some matters concerning how we are going to devise an agenda and pursue the agenda. I don't think we can work virtually as well as we work physically. For example, if you look at the number of items on the agenda, questions of the Commission's work, there are technical problems with dealing with those. We are experiencing technical problems from other delegations, and this is the case yesterday and today. We must therefore work to approve a modality of work for virtual meetings for the sake of good governance, but today we do not enjoy the proper conditions to work in such a way. So we will go along with the consensus as Cuba, but we're really concerned with the way we've been working. For the member states, like Cuba and other countries, the conditions are not proper. They're not conducive to good work. Virtual meetings should be held to deal with questions concerning urgent matters, concerning the crisis, or the questions that are fundamental for the organization, but not for all of the matters taken up in the agenda. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the efforts you've been making to achieve a consensus. Thank you.
I'm trying to check the list here concerning the next speaker. Pending clarification, I will give the floor to United Arab Emirates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please.
Thank you. We recommend, Mr. Chairman, focusing our discussion on whether the lack of clear direction about the meetings of the executive board will affect UNESCO's ability to support the sectors under its mandate. It would be also good for the Secretariat to identify decisions it needs from the board to be able to carry out its work effectively. If we don't meet at the end of this month, will it affect, the question is, will it affect UNESCO's ability to continue doing its work? If we're meeting for the sake of meeting and there will be no impact, then we can focus on meeting under optimal conditions at optimal times. But if UNESCO can deliver on its mandate effectively because the board hasn't met, then we should identify those areas and see how can we make decisions for UNESCO to be able to continue its work. Consensus and a way forward for our next meeting is vital. Therefore, we support the proposal of forming a working group to provide guidance. That, of course, goes to our colleagues from Jordan, Germany, and France with such a structure that will help our future meetings. I hope that this extraordinary virtual meeting is more of a learning process for all of us to carry on much more productive meetings in the future. And how can we prepare beforehand, as this is something I believe from hearing from everyone we all agree on. Dear colleagues, it's about the outcome more than the medium. I hope that our next meeting, maybe the 210 meeting, is more about impactful decisions discussed, consensus, appreciate the work that has been done by the African group. I think that is a model and a way forward for the future to think of. Yet we require the process to be clear, circulated officially for all of us to have a more productive session. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Saudi Arabia.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay.
We can hear. Yeah.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since the beginning, KSA supported and still supports the continuation of the Executive Board work and the UNESCO Board work in general, despite the ongoing restrictions that are taking place as a result of COVID-19. We do understand the need to reach a consensus on such a crucial issue, such as the methods of work under confinement. And this meeting today is to agree on the way forward and not on detailed technical issues. I would have loved today if we have discussed the agenda of 209 session. What can we focus on? What are the strategic priorities? And maybe, as I agree with our colleague from Albania, who said maybe we should have took some more time to prepare in advance and not spend your precious time and our precious time on discussing the technical details. Having said that, we acknowledge positions of member states, which all have solid grounds. We highly appreciate the collective action demonstrated by the African group. The proposal of the African group may very well become a ground for agreement, but the same applies for other proposals by other countries. And we can all acknowledge that, we can all address that, providing proper process taking place beforehand. Bearing in mind that the much appreciated efforts of the esteemed facilitators of Morocco and Switzerland did not lead to a clear consensus, we do not believe a consensus can be reached today with regard to the methods of work under confinement. Hence, we stress again on the importance of establishing the intersessional working group it should shed light on the technicalities needed to take the work forward and provide several options based on various proposals raised by member states. I agree that, and I know you have seen, Mr. Chair, other countries who have agreed on this and who have stressed on the importance of that. Jordan, Germany, France, Belarus, Republic of Korea, Albania, UAE, and other countries. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I see a clear direction and a clear interest in the intersessional working group and clear importance being made on the role of this group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Japan, please.
Okay, so I'm on the screen now. So can you hear me?
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm not going to be very long. I want to say three things. First of all, as a national position, we have no problem with the African proposal, and we are prepared to work on the facilitator's draft. That's point number one. But point number two, nevertheless, it is clear that there is no consensus here, and we don't have time. So the only option we can take, as far as I can see, is to go for the proposal made by the ambassador of Albania to establish a working group, and that can be included into a decision at this time as suggested by the ambassador of Albania. That's point number two. And point number three, nevertheless, I think the most important thing in this special session is to confirm that 209 session will be held in presential on the dates that, Mr. Chairperson, you have suggested. This is the most important thing. And here there's a need for certain adjustments because some people have to participate from the capitals. There's a need for certain adjustments. And then the working group can also discuss those issues so that people coming from the capital can also participate in the meeting. And as far as I can see, that's probably the only way to go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Russian Federation, please.
Do you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Excellency, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, yesterday the World Health Organization made a statement saying that while in Europe the situation with pandemic is improving, worldwide it's becoming worse. This creates a great uncertainty about the future UNESCO meetings. While the 209th session of the Executive Board hopefully could be held in Paris, what about the member states? Will they be able to attend? I mean, those delegations from other parts of the world. Therefore, we believe that to have a document on methods of work would be highly useful and desirable. Just in case we'll need other virtual sessions or special sessions of the board. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the executive board to fulfill its constitutional mandate. However, we find ourselves in a very confusing situation. A number of delegations suggest that we get back to the documents proposed by the Secretariat, while everybody knows that that the special session was postponed precisely because there was no consensus on the draft decisions prepared by the Secretariat. So now to propose to adopt them by consensus it means to demonstrate a clear disrespect to all the work done by member states under the able work of the facilitators, which, by the way, was completely legitimate. There were 70 different proposals by member states. So we strongly believe that this commendable work is a good basis for consensus. But of course, the goodwill is necessary to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you. On the list, the next ones will be St. Vincent, Jordan, Philippines, Indonesia, Benin. I give the floor to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my delegation supports what has been clearly said by Egypt, St. Lucia, and Turkey. My delegation supported the African DR as sent by the co-facilitators, and I thank them for their enormous work. This DR is the result of negotiations held between the members of the board and, of course, between the members who have also presented DRs and proposals. My delegation sees no contradiction in the DR with the others proposed. On the contrary, it reflects all ideas, clearly appends the working methods which already exist, and also includes the creation of an open-ended working group requested by many member states. And this group could continue to examine, if necessary, certain rules which need to be clarified. Nothing is new, and the annex, as has been said by the ambassador of Kenya, is an adaptation and shows the applicability of the rules of procedure. These rules are presented in the addendum, where it is indicated that the majority of them do not need to change the rules of procedure. Mr. President, we are already today applying the working methods of a virtual session, and today's session could be considered as a first experience which teaches us what should be improved or changed. We have a decision and we cannot lose this opportunity to adopt it, especially since we don't know yet if we can hold the 209th session in presencia. A minimum of a decision, as the ambassador of Venezuela had said, is necessary for the near future. I also heard, Mr. Chairman, today that meetings within United Nations are informal and without decision, but there are many formal virtual meetings with decisions. As members of the board, if we do not show our capacity to assume our responsibility in the decision-making process, especially in these critical times, and if we don't advance in our work in front of other United Nations bodies, I am wondering, Mr. Chairman, if UNESCO will not be left behind. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Jordan, please. Jordan, please. Secretariat is Jordan coming in? Okay, we still don't have Jordan. He's coming now. Okay, next one will be Philippines. The Philippines. Philippines. Okay, we are waiting for Jordan and the Philippines. I will give the floor to Indonesia, please. The next will be Benin. Indonesia?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We appreciate the efforts that you've taken all day. We note the various points that have been expressed by various members, and we particularly support the viewpoint that has been given by Bangladesh, by St. Lucia, and Pakistan. In this context, let me raise 3 points, Mr. Chair. First, virtual meetings is here to stay in some form or another. UNESCO is behind the ball on this. Every other international organization has been doing this on a regular basis since COVID. It is also an irony that while UNESCO is advocating for distance learning, we are not ready for distant meeting. So therefore, Mr. Chair, the best outcome for this special session is for us to agree on steps, on procedures, on how best to address virtual meetings. This brings me to my second point, Chair. The facilitator have done an excellent job in coming up with a text. As they have reported to you, Chair, substantive discussion and inputs has been given for this process. The ambassador of Russia earlier informed us that around 70 inputs and this has been given. So I think we have a good basis to use this text. 3 elements I would like to raise that has been raised in this facilitator's text. First is that they have decided to propose the creation of an open-ended working group or an intersessional working group to prepare for procedures for a virtual meeting based on a certain timeline and deadline. Second, they've introduced Annex 1, which is based on a draft procedure based on the African group's proposal. And second point, and the third point is they've also introduced Annex 2, which is the mechanism for asylum procedures. And I believe, Chair, any outcome that we have today, we agree on from the special session on the procedure for virtual session for virtual meeting must have these 3 elements on an agreement. This leads me to my third point, Chair. So for Indonesia, we can either use the facilitator's text as a basis for a discussion or for an agreement, as you suggested, or we can use the secretariat text and introduce these 3 elements as additional to the 2 points that was in the secretariat text. So that's my proposal to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Jordan or Philippines or not yet? Jordan. Okay, Jordan, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have all stressed on the fact that consensus is the way forward. And not only reaching a consensus on already non-consensual proposal. The facilitators confirmed that they did not reach consensus before this meeting. The perception that was created in this room is that whoever is asking for a point of order is de facto against consensus, which was not the case. Mr. Chair, our duty with your wise and able leadership is to reach at least a middle ground. Let's meet in the middle. You said in the morning session that we either reach a consensus on the African group proposal or agree on nothing. We see that the African group proposal is an excellent starting point, but I don't see my delegation able to align itself with the proposal without consulting with the capital. And what applies to my delegation applies to many delegations in this room. We all know that consensus in principle cannot be imposed. It has to be reached through constructive dialogue. So I would just repeat the proposal that I have put on the table this morning. Let's create an intercessional working group. I believe this is a middle ground approach supported by many delegations who took the floor in the morning and in this afternoon session. As has been mentioned by the delegation of Argentina, consensus is the absence of active opposition. It is unfortunately not the case for any of the proposals on the table. No proposal can qualify to be a consensual text without the agreement of all member states. My concrete proposal that strictly follows the rules of procedure and established practice is to start from the documents submitted by the Secretariat and add one single operative paragraph that reads, decides to create an open-ended working group that takes stock of documents submitted by member states, facilitators, and the discussions that took place during the 6th special session of the Executive Board, with a view of adopting proper working methods for virtual meetings of the board in the future. Endorsing this proposal will ensure that we don't prejudice any proposal or submission by member states, taking into consideration the limited time given to the facilitators. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. While waiting for the Philippines to join us, can I now go to Benin? After Benin, we will have Bangladesh, China, Tunisia, Serbia, Equatorial Guinea, Bulgaria. I understand that Philippines is now with us. Yes, the Philippines, if you are here, please take the floor. The Philippines, is it being connected with the Philippines? Okay, we will wait a bit for the Philippines to come. Now, Benin. Benin, you have the floor, Excellency. Le micro, Excellency.
I hope you can hear me now. Yes, now we can hear you, Your Excellency. Excellent. Thank you very much, Chair. Please allow me at the outset to express my delight that we have a fairly serene atmosphere in which our work is taking place, despite the difficulty of the issue, the complexity of the issue, and the circumstances. I think, Chair, that the time has come to show some courage, some audacity when it comes to the working methods of our organization, of our body at a time of crisis. And I think that that is precisely why this item finds itself on our agenda for today. And if we want to be consistent with ourselves, we must, without further delay, find a way out by equipping ourselves with such a tool. And I believe that the facilitators, and I praise them for their good work, have put forward some very interesting proposals that have been distributed, that have been distributed in a spirit of consensus. And when I refer to the addendum to document 6 EX2, one sees therein a table, and that is an extremely official document that has been distributed. We have a table where the proposals are not at all in contradiction with the proposals made by the facilitator. And so we are tempted, Mr. Chairperson, to suggest that a working group be constituted, a working group of volunteers who would join the facilitators in order to provide us with the tools that we need for the 209th session, with respect to which at the present time nothing is guaranteed or certain. And such a group of volunteers, extended to include the two facilitators, could succeed if we had the audacity to put such a working group to work. Then it could come up with something that would attract a consensus. And I would like to close by saying that the issue is urgent. When you juxtapose all of this with all of the pressing issues put on the table by the distinguished delegate of Turkey, it's obvious that this is urgent. And I hope we will come back to that. Thank you very much. Bangladesh has the floor.
Okay, China is connected. China, please take the floor, Excellency.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Yes, I can hear you, sir. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll try to be very brief as well. That first of all, I think the very reason that we are having this current special session is try to find out the ways to enable the executive board to carry out its statutory function under such extraordinary circumstances. China fully concurs with the view expressed by Bangladesh ambassador, Russian ambassador, and a few other colleagues that we can make it work somehow. That in fact the two facilitators, they have done excellent job. Despite of the time constraint, they have made remarkable progress, and can form their result can be a very good base for discussion. And secondly, China is open-minded with regard to whether the 209 and or future sessions should be in presential or still being virtual. I think it does not matter whichever mode, even if it is going to be in presential, we should nevertheless work out the methods that will enable our statutory meeting actually to be presented in virtual mode. And therefore, the discussion inevitably will be that we need to work out the methods that all agree that to enable some kind of a virtual meeting just in case. And of course, that we also fully understand at the moment that even if in presential meeting can be operated, there are members, representatives and members from capital, they cannot come, and they could make use of the virtual mode. So it is important that we work out methods. And thirdly, we believe that the St. Lucia amendment or the African amendment or the third, the documents have worked out by the two facilitators can serve very good base for discussion. But if there is no agreement on that, we could using another way of getting around. We presented the Secretariat's draft resolution, and then we presented the St. Lucia or the African or the facilitators version as amendments to the DR presented by Secretariat, and then we started discussion and try to get some agreement on that. So we are open, but we have no problem with either the St. Lucia version or the African version or the facilitators version as the base for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Tunisia, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have very carefully followed the statements made by various colleagues, whom I would like to thank most warmly for their efforts. I think there is a real will on the part of all delegations to try to find a solution. Now, I'd like to put one important point on the table, that of time. It's 15:52, and we're in the afternoon of the second day of our meeting, the last day of our meeting. And I think that that is something to be taken into consideration. And that is why, to begin with, in the name of the Tunisian delegation, I would like to renew our thanks for the excellent work done by our two ambassador facilitators from Morocco and Switzerland. I would also like to underscore the fact that the document drawn up by the Africa Group is very much to the point. I think that there is an opportunity to find a consensus, but it is also possible that we will not achieve the consensus. So let us be responsible and take that scenario into consideration. So as we've already said in writing to the facilitators, Tunisia is in favor of the holding of the 209 session, even if it is to be virtual, and that is why we support the idea of the creation of an intersessional group open to all, with a time-limited mandate, with a view to providing us with the tools required should the 209 session be held virtually, but were it to be held in presentia, UNESCO would have up its sleeve the tools required should a similar situation occur in the future. If we don't do that, Chairperson, then all of these past efforts will have been in vain, and we will end up with nothing, and that would be a great pity. We must overcome that constraint. Thank you very much. Serbia has the floor.
Serbia will be followed by Equatorial Guinea, Bulgaria.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. I'm very pleased with the discussion that we had so far, because basically it showed in the importance and the rightness that we all have in supporting this virtual meeting. So this virtual meeting of the executive board showed that we managed to sit in front of our computers all and exchange the views on the important issue for our delegation. But this first virtual meeting also showed that still there are technical difficulties that we have to overcome in the context of the virtual meetings. And unfortunately, as the other colleagues said, we can't exclude that in future we will have virtual meetings as well. So these technical problems show that we have to have in mind also when we are talking about the working methods and the way we should proceed. Because we should by all means avoid the situation when we are creating inequality among the delegations, because some delegations due to the technical problems cannot intervene and express their views. For that reasons, and having in mind clearly that we still don't have consensus on the working methods, we should seek for the consensus. I don't think at this point, Mr. Chair, we are in the situation that we can enter in the drafting exercise. When I say consensus, this is in no way to paralyze executive board. On contrary, I think we all here agreed on 2 points we do have consensus. One is that we have to have a clarity on the working methods, and the other side, we have to have a clarity on the documents that we are discussing. And although we have to be innovative in accordance with the situation, we have to be very careful at the same time not to the change and not to stick clearly to the procedures that we have. So we have to have a clarity on the documents that we are discussing. We have to have outcome, Chair. We are all for it. And you know that the Serbian delegation, when we talked to prior to the meetings of the Bureau and prior to the meeting of the Executive Board, we were fully in line with your view that we have to have successful Executive Board to show the unity, to show the role of the Executive Board. We all agree on that. So I think the best way forward in order to have the outcome, and that's in line with the Serbian proposal to the facilitators, is to establish the working group. But this working group, Chair, and I think that's what the beneficial, and I would want warm-heartedly to thank the African countries for their valuable contribution. This working group is not going to start from the scratch. It's going to have a facilitators document, is going to have African document. And that's something that basically establishment of the working group was something that was mentioned also in the facilitator document. So I think we progressed. We are not at the point when we were at the first meetings of the Bureau, when we were all members of the Bureau discussing on the virtual session. So my delegation fully supports the idea to have establishment of the working group, and to have that working group that is having in mind also the documents that were already prepared. And one last point, and I'm sorry for taking so much time, Mr. Chair. The position of my delegation was also very clear in the consultations with facilitators. Having in mind the technical difficulties that can still occur during the virtual sessions, we think in the context of the working method, it's very important to discuss the documents that are only subject to the prior consensus, because I'm very afraid, Chair, if we are finding ourselves in the situation when we have to vote, what would be the situation if some countries cannot log in, if they can't present their views. So my delegation fully supports establishing the working group with a clear view to find the consensus and to have the documents that are subject to the prior consensus and to avoid voting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Equatorial Guinea, please.
Equatorial Guinea would like to state that it seems very clear that no one knows when the COVID-19 pandemic will come to an end. Specialists are talking about the possibility of a second wave in the weeks to come. So it would be prudent for our executive board to adopt working methods for virtual meetings. And what the facilitators have worked on, what they have proposed on the basis of contributions from member states, is something that could be taken into consideration. And we know that over the next few days, there is to be a session of the preparatory group in virtual mode. The 209th session is not certain to be organized in presentia, as has always been the case up to now. So we believe that it would be prudent to adopt working methods. But as indicated by Kenya, all we need to do is to adapt the current rules of procedure to virtual meetings. And if we don't do that, then all of the efforts made will go to waste, and that would be irresponsible on the part of the executive board. Bulgaria has the floor.
It will be followed by Madagascar, Spain, Ethiopia, Argentina, Italy, and finally San Lucia. Bulgaria, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, please, sir.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would like to make a couple of points on how we read this situation now. First, I'll start with the so-called prearrangements of this special session. Our understanding was that we have agreed in advance of the session, in the process of its preparation, that only a consensual document should have been proposed and adopted by the session. Therefore, the second element of this prearrangements was, in our view, that no drafting of the text will be allowed or will be done during the special session. And the third element of this prearrangement, in our view, was that there will be therefore no vote on a document on item 2. Unfortunately, although Bulgaria is very much in favor of consensus, and I would like to stress it once again here in front of you and all the colleagues of the board, today we do not have a consensual document up to this moment. But nevertheless, we should respect this prearrangement, these kind of rules, temporary rules that we have agreed upon during the preparation of this session. Because if we do not respect the rules, the procedures, there is a risk that we will undermine the trust among us, among the members of the board. And the trust is maybe the most precious thing we have in all situations, not only in crisis situation as we are living today, this pandemic crisis. Second point that I would like to mention and to share with you is on the substance. Just to illustrate our position and our seriousness when we talk about rules of procedures and their interpretation, because I've got the feeling that we are talking about interpretation of the rules of procedures of the board as some mere technicalities. But for us, this is a legal process, legislating process, because although we can call them a technical adaptation, we are in fact creating new legal rules that all the member states after us, the future members also of the board, they will have to abide by, they will have to observe these rules. And I mean, these rules in the future will have diplomatic and political implications for all the members of the board, not only for this set of board members, but also for the future, as I said. That's why we need time. We need to be very attentive, and we need to be on a very firm legal and technical ground, because also today and yesterday we witnessed so many misconnections, disconnections, and so on, that in another situation might create a lot of problems. I'll give you a simple, even protocol moment. For instance, today I saw on the chat that many delegations mentioned that, you know, I was before that.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I really regret to intervene, but we have to be a bit strict on the 2 minutes. I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
because there are many
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will conclude, although here is also a technical problem, because this morning I witnessed when many other delegates talked quite longer than 2 minutes. Anyway, this is just to illustrate my thought that technicality in diplomatic world is very sensitive thing, and diplomacy and diplomats are very sensitive about technicalities. And last, just to conclude, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. To conclude, to summarize the situation, we know that diplomacy is the art of the possible. Unfortunately, today, consensus was not possible, or is not possible yet. We have a few hours to go ahead. So what is the exit from this situation? In my view, this is time. We need more time. Symbolically, we can stop the clock, as it is practiced in many other, not many, but in some other situations. We can stop the clock and continue working. So in order to give a chance to the time and to this goodwill to reach consensus through an intersessional working group, or formally or informally. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify that the question of these 2 minutes comes for the debate of this afternoon, but to the extent possible, we are giving all the delegations the time needed, but giving the time and items at the beginning of the interventions, I said that we will try to be strict on the 2 minutes. not because I want to, but because it's really necessary to give the floor to all the member states. Now, Madagascar will be followed by Spain, Ethiopia, Argentina, Italy, and finally, San Lucia. Sorry. They told me Bangladesh is now connected because we passed. Bangladesh was not before. Bangladesh, please take the floor before Madagascar.
Visible, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary, for getting me connected. I will be very, very brief. First of all, I will reminiscence what we were told when we started our service in a training academy. We were told in a negotiation that we have to be respectful to others' view, although we may not agree. Secondly, we were also told that we must avoid, rather refrain from using derogatory remarks addressed to anyone in person. Perhaps we have seen some of the comments made which was not entirely appropriate in person. Secondly, I was just I wanted to share this information, and I just learned about it yesterday, that there is a St. Martha's Church, Peter perhaps could correct me, St. Martha's Church in Berlin opened its premises for Friday prayers. Now, that is an indication of the solidarity and camaraderie that COVID-19 has brought us together. We would like to see the same degree of understanding. I would like to simply reiterate that I mean, we are thankful for the many interventions made in support of the facilitator stakes and the position that we had taken. And what I would like to suggest here, that we do not jettison all the good work that facilitators have done. In the facilitators text, there was also a reference to having an intersessional working group. We are open to it. I would also like to just point out that an outcome of this session is very important, because this is the work method for the executive board was what this session was intended to work on. And finally, should that working group be formed without going into too much of a difficulty, we would even suggest that the facilitators take on the responsibility to lead that process, having a broad understanding of the position of different working groups. I haven't discussed or even consulted the two facilitators, but I'm taking this advantage of their the wisdom and the accommodation that they have showed during the informal process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madagascar? Madagascar is not yet connected. Spain, I think, is connected. Spain, yes. Spain, please take the floor. Will be followed by Ethiopia, Argentina, Italy, and San Lucia. Spain, please take the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be very brief, because one of the good things of speaking in one of the last ones is that everything has already been said, except for 2 or 3 ideas. First, I think that, I mean, reality is stubborn, even if we want to escape reality, and I will do exactly the same as the Tunisian ambassador. It is 4:10, and we are going to finish at 6. So I think it is obvious that there will be no consensus today on point number 2. So the delegation of Spain wants to make a proposal for a minimum consensus. To please move on to point 3, because it is very unfair not to discuss the point 3 on the effect of COVID in the organization, and continue the discussion of point 2, as it has been said by many countries: Germany, Jordan, Argentina, France, Albania, Bulgaria, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Finland, the Netherlands, Poland, Serbia, Italy, and many others. to the next presidential executive board, either the 200, I think that 210 would be the ideal, but even we could accept 209. I don't think we have time with the intercession working group. But I would like to also to comment the Russian objection of about the in-presential meeting of the executive board in July. You mentioned, Ambassador, that the RMS informed yesterday, but if you see today's Le Monde, in the first page, you can see an article which is very interesting, it is called Comment le Covid-19 pourrait...
How the COVID could disappear.
It is a very clear and easy option that it might disappear very easily and very soon, the COVID-19. So for all those pessimist delegates that spoke before me, remember this possibility. But what I wanted to say is that in the Chinese line of the Ambassador of China is that we should have this in-presential meeting in July at UNESCO headquarters for the delegations that we are here and we live here, and we can combine at the same time to have the virtual presence of people in the countries that cannot travel to Paris. So we could make really an easy combination, but the basis is the in-presential meeting, and also we can add comments, virtual comments from different countries that couldn't come to Paris. So please, let's discuss point 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Ethiopia?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Chair, let me first thank you for all your efforts trying to help us reach consensus on this very important topic. From the discussions we have heard, it's clear that there are points of consensus among us all. There are also points of divergence, and we believe also there's a way out that can accommodate or should accommodate all of us. In terms of the points of agreement, it is clear that we all want our board to exercise and play its rightful role, oversight role as a governing body. It is also clear, and I think we all agree, that given the uncertain environment which we're in, having in place the adaptation of our rules to the possibility of future virtual meetings is also critical. We should not be caught off guard. It is in that spirit that the Africa Group, which we have at least the board Africa members, which we have the honor of chairing, we proposed through an initial proposal of Kenya, adopted by the entire group, proposal for the methods of work of our board. Now, unfortunately, the proposal we have submitted doesn't seem to have the concurrence or the agreement of all. Some have raised technical issues in terms of the submission of the document and its legal validity. Others have raised issues of need for consultation with their capitals. And of course, we all should understand this, because we all agree that we have to advance on a consensual basis in order to reach an agreement that satisfies us all. So, Mr. Chairman, on that basis, it is our view that we believe there can be a way forward that can accommodate us all. It's clear that online negotiation on the text, even if all of us had agreed to accept the Africa proposal or the facilitators text, that is not possible. To discuss the rules one by one online, to see what should be in there and what should not, it's not just a question of a matter of time, it's just practically not feasible. Therefore, if we want to advance, we believe the right way of advancing would be to take the basis of the Secretariat's draft decision, which is a draft decision properly submitted. That draft decision, we could add a paragraph stating that we established a working group, as was mentioned by many delegations, a working group composed of member states, of course, but assisted by the Secretariat, because you will note that in the concrete proposals, there are, of course, areas where the Secretariat need to clarify or put in place mechanisms, important mechanisms for virtual meetings. So it's a joint effort that has to be made. We have to give it a timeline. We believe it's very important that we have this working methods in place very quickly. Therefore, our submission would be that this working group be set up immediately after this our meeting, and that it presents proposals for the 209 session that will be held in 3 weeks' time. That would be our suggestion. Because, Mr. Chairperson, we also heard about the 209, whether it's going to be a virtual or a in-presential meeting. It looks like, standing from where we are today, in-presential meeting might be possible, at least from what we heard from the Secretariat and the indications given by the host country. But having said that, it will be held with a number of restrictions and limitations. So in-presential meeting will have its own limitations. Virtual meeting, as we all know, as can see, vividly see, it also has its own limitations. Therefore, we would probably need to put in place a combination of a virtual and an in-presential meeting, so that those who are not able to travel, especially from countries such as mine, which are now entering into the peak phase of the pandemic, where we expect the peak to be in the next couple of weeks. My officials may not be able to travel, obviously. Therefore, we will need to have mechanisms in place. At the same time, we would also need to plan for the in-presential meeting, meaning because we can combine both, because we are in a transition phase, in our humble opinion. Therefore, that would be our suggestion as a way forward, so that we can close this debate and consider the other substantive matter of the impact of COVID on our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last three on my list, Argentina, followed by Italy and San Lucia. Argentina, you have the floor, please. Thank you, sir.
Oui. Vous m'entendez là? Oui. Vous m'entendez, Michel?
Can you hear me, Chair? Yes, I can hear you. But could you speak closer to the microphone? Yeah, it's all clear. I can hear you. Chair, I want to be brief. Well, I won't be brief. There are no established rules for our interventions. It's very important for us to take the floor. We all need to take part in this meeting. The question is, how can we take part in it? And when we started the meeting, the situation was not entirely different. And we're now talking about a future meeting in Presentia. Dialogue is extremely important. But as we said many times, it's not that important to take decisions. What is important is to have a dialogue. And when we do not agree, when we don't have the same point of view, when we don't see things in the same way, when it is not absolutely necessary to take decisions, we don't. So for the time being, we disagree today, which means that we have to find ways of agreeing. And we don't have an agreement. We didn't reach an agreement before the opening of this session. Many times we compared UNESCO with other organizations from the UN system. Now, UNESCO is unique. We did a lot of things, and our delegation and other delegations criticized the Secretariat because there were many meetings, but we didn't have enough information. And let's remember the meeting of the Ministers of Culture. What happened? During the meeting in Presentia, people took the floor less often. So what do we want to negotiate here? And why do we want to negotiate? The emergency situation shows that there's a lot of anxiety. But let's not forget that we have rules. We have a C4, we have the C5, and these two documents are very important. How are we going to finance the future activities of the organization? The crisis is unfolding, and the crisis hasn't ended yet, and that is why we need to establish rules for the future. But that is why it is so difficult to establish rules. So we need to find solutions appropriate for everyone. So what does UNESCO do? UNESCO has to work, has to be an example for all the other international organizations. We have to show that UNESCO is still here.
This morning, you said that we shouldn't use the chat function, and we're using it still. And you will have noticed, Mr. Chairman, that during the meeting, as there are no rules, and it is so difficult to establish said rules, everyone said what we would say later, right? And chat is also part of this virtual reality we live in now. Of course, a meeting in Presentia is going to be very difficult to organize, and there will be many difficulties. But we can still try to a dialogue, and we will try to make a decision in the best way possible. This is why we very strongly support the proposal put forward by many countries, Jordan, France, Serbia, Poland, and so on and so forth. And many delegations are still using the chat function. The chairman interrupts the speaker. In June, we will have to have a meeting. The opinion of our delegation is that we are not against the proposal of the Africa group, but we were not given time to look at this information in our regional groups and in our delegations, and we can't accept one document and not the others, especially if we haven't been given the opportunity to look at them properly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Madagascar, and then St. Lucia. Madagascar, you have the floor. We can hear you. We can hear you. Madagascar, are you still with us?
C'est bon? Oui, mais...
C'est bon?
C'est bon, on vous voit. Vous pouvez parler, Excellence.
We can see you. We can see you, Excellency. Mr. Chair, we are here at the heart of a strategy of adaptation and anticipation, and I've talked about this yesterday. It is quite the complex and difficult task, and our discussions show this. But once all of this will be over tonight, this evening, we cannot go home, so to speak, without having some sort of result come out of this meeting. We have invested far too much. The Africa Group has invested far too much. St. Lucia has invested far too much. And the facilitators who have worked tirelessly. And we've had these discussions for 2 days now. Here is what we would like to suggest, very quickly, Mr. Chair. I would like to propose that at least today we define a principle without going against the rules of procedure. We can use as a basis the facilitator's text, helped with the secretary's text, but also with the other texts, so that no one is left aside. This would be the first step. Second step, 209th session of the Executive Board, during which the working group would present the suggestions or proposals, no matter what the format of this session will be, whether it be virtual or in presentia. Thank you. Thank you. St. Lucia has the floor now.
San Lucia, please. And it is the last speaker on my list. Is San Lucia in? Okay.
I'm in.
We can hear you now. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the 209th session can only be hybrid. My very, very dear friend from Spain should have read the rest of the article in Le Monde that I've read myself that says that the COVID might also come back very strongly. Delegates will not be able to travel to France at the end of June. The possibilities for travel are only within the European Union, but we receive delegates from outside the EU. This means it is urgent that we equip ourselves with working methods. Dear colleagues, what is wrong with this organization? Why is UNESCO different from all other organizations that are functioning online and taking decisions online? Our delegations in Brussels are engaged today, this afternoon, in the toughest negotiations with the European Union at the highest levels, online. What they are discussing, believe me, is much more complicated than what we are discussing online today. And over here, we have EU ambassadors telling us that this is too difficult to negotiate online and we should only exchange information and debate in our sessions. This morning, some members of the board told us that the only way to take decisions by consensus at this session is to adopt the decisions of the Secretariat. I find this mind-blowing. So 70 member states work for weeks on the text and have to throw their work and work on the draft of the Secretariat and on an addendum that was published only yesterday, and I have to admit I personally discovered it only today. Mr. Chair, I think this is quite disrespectful for member states. If we want to work on the text, it has to be the facilitator's text, as it responds to all the requests made in the debate. We have the annexes, we have the creation of a working group. We do not support a decision that will only create a working group. We need the annexes to be part of any decision, as was clearly said by Indonesia and China. The middle ground cannot be to accommodate the position of some and ignore the positions of others, and on top of it, to come and present it as a good compromise. And the definition of consensus cannot change depending on the items and on the interest. If we had applied the definition of Argentina and Jordan during the discussion on the budget ceiling, we would not have adopted the higher ceiling because many countries were saying no, and they were very loud and clear in saying no. The 209th session can only be hybrid, and we need methods of work. We cannot endanger the 209th session and leave the organization without governance, without oversight, and without guidance for a whole year. Mr. President, if we cannot agree today on the facilitator's text, I would like to remind you that you are absolutely free to consult under Article 60 after this session is over to equip us with something for the next session of the Executive Board. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are also, okay, thank you. I understand that Italy wants to intervene, but I thought I had already given the floor to Italy. What is the Secretariat telling me? I thought I gave the floor to Italy already. I already gave the floor. So, okay, Excellencies, while Secretariat is verifying this question, I think Italy, is it Italy? Italy.
Yes, we are.
I already gave the floor to Italy, no? Did I? Is it the second time Italy? Because I thought I gave you the floor.
I spoke this morning, but asked the floor after
Not in the afternoon. I'm sorry. I apologize. So please take the floor, sir. Okay. Italy is the last country to intervene this afternoon. Thank you.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned this before the break. As we said just before, we believe in the importance of consensus, and this is the spirit in which we put forward our proposal based on the previous consensus to the facilitators, taking into account the technical constraints. At this point, we also have legal limitations that prevent us from talking about the documents presented. The discussion today shows that there is no consensus on either proposals in spite of the work done by the facilitators. Unfortunately, we could not find a consensus. We would like to thank the authors of the proposals showing how determined delegations are, and we thank them for these elements that were put forward that we need to take into consideration. We have also made proposals. The technical and operational aspects should be given or taken care of by an intersessional working group. This idea was mentioned by various delegations and supported notably by Jordan and others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
First of all, I would like to thank everybody, frankly. For me, this afternoon, I am personally pleased on the tone and the direction we were taking. I personally was expecting the afternoon to be much more difficult, but I could sense the collective interest, as always in UNESCO, to advance. And therefore, I will try to take some of the points. As you can see, it will not be easy, my task, because of the divergent points, but I will do my best in trying to summarize. The summary for me, nobody please should take it as my opinion. I stand to be corrected. But I will try to do my best to come up with what unites us, because this afternoon, frankly speaking, I think it was said by Ethiopia and other delegations, I felt that there is a lot in terms of consensus this afternoon. And I will try to make some preliminary remarks and make a proposal based on that. It is not my proposal. I'm trying to translate what I heard, and we can improve it. The first thing is that, as you all know, on the 11th, the preparatory group of the 209 session is going to take place virtually. And the first point in that agenda is the election of the president and vice president. I want us to take this into consideration. Now, what did I hear? I did not hear a very clear consensus on every single thing, but I heard on the back that we seem to agree in many things. The document that was submitted by the Secretariat, I heard many member states that say it will be easier if we use the decision on the item EX2 because this is the document that has been submitted officially and legally in accordance to the rules. I also heard many saying we should not diverge with the rules and regulation. I heard others that says we don't want to decide on that decision from the Secretariat because the facilitators have done a lot of work after that document to improve it. I heard, this is what is, for me, I think I didn't hear one single member being against congratulating and expressing our satisfaction for the excellent work that has been done by the two ambassadors from Morocco and Switzerland. There, I can say without hesitation that I heard 100% support, which is a consensus on that point. I heard that the majority of member states, they do not have particularly a problem with the table that was produced by the facilitators, which is an improvement from the table that was submitted by the Secretariat. You may not agree with what the Secretariat says, but it is a factual information that the work of the facilitator is based on what the Secretariat submitted. Whether we agree with that or not, it is a matter of fact, and we cannot exclude that fact. Then I also heard, I think from a very important majority, again here I may stand to be corrected, that people notice that, okay, the table is fine, but it will not hurt if we look at it very closely with the assistance of the Secretariat and a working group from the member states that could come up with something at the 209 session. This is how I summarize what I heard that could unite us, because for me, implicitly, we're already talking about things that we agreed on. Having said that, I hear a text that everything that I'm saying is in a text. The 2 points, the document from the Secretariat, no matter how strongly we feel, we simply cannot ignore it. It's a fact, it's there. We may disagree with it, or we may agree with it, but we cannot ignore that fact. So I think that by saying that we have taken note, the Executive Board, having examined the document EX2, is a factual thing. We did examine it. Whether we agree or not, we did. The second thing is that we did take note of that document. So the modalities online outlined in that document for meeting, I think it doesn't hurt if we confirm that, yes, we take note. Up to there, all those that wanted us to consider the document from the Secretariat, of course, in accordance to the practice, I think they will find themselves here also, and everybody else, because this is a factual information. But where the other ones can join in is that we also took note, even before that, we appreciated the work of the facilitators. That's a document. We express our appreciation of the two facilitators. I think that this is a consensual point. Point 4, we did take note of the table, which is the consensus from the African group, because I heard everybody, and I can feel that the document from the African group, most people support it, but some people will need some time to confirm that support after consulting their capitals, which is normal in accordance to UNESCO practice. We also saw that although it was approved by the African group, it does not necessarily mean that is the approval of the Executive Board. And therefore, we can take note of the table, which for me is no longer the table of the African group, because there were many other groups that have come in. We can take note of the table that was worked out tirelessly by the facilitators, because the support we are giving the facilitators may not be correct if at least we do not acknowledge some of the work that they did. And I felt that we acknowledge the work they did by adopting and just taking note. We're not approving, taking note of that table because they work on it very hard. They come practically to a consensus. We can take note. And finally, this is paragraph 4. If I feel that we have this, I feel that most member states may agree to the fact that we decide to create an open-ended working group which can look into what we have, the working method, work very closely with the Secretariat, and that in the 209 session, they can bring us something that is well polished. What I have summarized in 5 points, my feeling is that this is a consensus somehow from the group. I say that that consensus is difficult to take. You can understand that there were many interventions, but I have tried to summarize it in these 5 points. If you do not see an objection, I would like to put that text on the screen, ask the Secretary to read it very slowly, and see if you have the same feeling that this table really reflects the consensual discussion that we have had this afternoon. I would like to ask the Secretary, but if the Secretariat, the Secretariat to put that text on the screen, read it very slowly so that people can listen to it and see if it is true that somehow it takes into account all our input in a way that can be consensual and accepted. Secretariat, please put this text on the screen first and read as slowly as you possibly can and paying attention. Just call your attention that point 1 and 2 are the ones that are in the document AX2, but the Secretariat will read it. And then the paragraph 3 is the one that is submitted by the facilitators and the decision. So these are documents that already exist, but I just try to put them in one document. Secretariat, please take the floor and read slowly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I will read the draft decision in English. In light of the above, the Executive Board may wish to adopt a decision along the following lines. The Executive Board, having examined document 6X-EX2, takes note of the points pertaining to the modalities for the conduct of an online meeting as described herein. Paragraph 3 expresses its appreciation to His Excellency Mr. Martin Michelet, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate to Switzerland, to UNESCO, and to His Excellency Mr. Samir Adare, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of Morocco, for their work in leading and facilitating the informal working group of the Executive Board with a view to ensure consensual decisions on 2 agenda items of the 6th special session, item 6X-EX2, methods of work of the Executive Board under confinement, in item 6X-EX3, impact of COVID-19 on UNESCO's programs and activities. Paragraph 4 also takes note of the table produced by the facilitators entitled Application of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Board for Virtual Meetings. Paragraph 5 decides to create an open-ended working group that should present its conclusions at the 209th session of the Executive Board. Thank you.
We forgot something. Open-ended working group composed of, let's say, 4 or 5 representatives from each working electoral group. That we forgot is not reflected. Can you include that and Secretariat read that again after including that part?
Paragraph 5 decides to create an open-ended working group composed of 4 or 5 representatives of each electoral group that should present its conclusions at the 209th session of the Executive Board.
Okay, Excellencies, as I said, it is extremely difficult to satisfy everybody, but in the spirit of consensus and in trying to help, knowing that we are already, even on the 11th, we are already having virtual meeting approved already, where we may need some guidance as to how to proceed, taking into account also that the question of COVID, although the situation looks more and more much better for the host country, which will permit us to be able to meet under certain circumstances, the situation may not be so positive in many other parts of the world, which can affect the delegation that also wants to participate in UNESCO's meeting. With that, I would like to plead to all of you that here nobody is winning 100% and nobody is losing. But I think if we can have a consensual agreement like this one, we will, I think, contribute in helping our organization. Now, sorry. Okay, we will try to improve it now. So I will now want to give the floor, please, not to reopen the debate, but really a plea, it's a plea because we have a very important subject, impact of COVID. And if this, we can really live with that because we are not compromising. The working group will take place, immediately will be constituted, but they need to, somebody made on the chat a recommendation to approve, to improve the text on the open-ended, not to be long, but I think it's a technicality issue. I will ask the Secretariat to say what is it, because I think it's an important comment, and then we will try to see whether we can move with this. What is the clarification that they are asking for, please?
Yes, the comment on the chat is that if it's an open-ended group and it's limited to 4 or 5 people from each electoral group, it's not open-ended.
So we should leave only open-ended without saying how many? Is it? Okay, we will leave the floor. We'll give the floor to member state. They will be probably they will have appropriate comments to make in order to improve that text. So I'm appealing to everybody whether you can accept that we try to work with this text and we improve it. Now, if any member state want to raise the floor, please try to help us. Summarizing this is nothing easy. Please try to help us. Okay, I see Ethiopia and Bangladesh. Ethiopia, I give you the floor, followed by Bangladesh. Ethiopia.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the remarkable work you have done to basically narrow the different positions and come at what I think is a very good consensus. I think it's the right way forward, and I would urge both on my behalf and also on behalf of our group, Africa Group, really follow your conclusions, and we close this matter. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much, Ethiopia. Bangladesh, any comment? Bangladesh, can you please connect Bangladesh? Please, Bangladesh, I would like to really complete this point because we have a very important item on the impact of COVID, please. Can you connect Bangladesh? Maybe Bangladesh will raise the hand again so that we can connect you, please, sir. The floor has been given to Bangladesh, so we will wait 1 second to have Bangladesh on the screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll like to compliment you on your summarization and your summary, and I believe that there's enough element in the draft that you have proposed for for a consensus. But just to clarify on the point on item on paragraph 4, we would like to see as the facilitators table be attached to the decision, so that we have a clear idea what table we are talking about. And secondly, with regard to the open-ended working group, it would be better, more efficient if we can restrict the number to 4. Or I mean, we have to specify. We would prefer to have 5 members per electoral group in the working group, and that would be, I suppose, the 2 points that we wanted to make. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretariat. Can you, on point 4, can we put something to attach the table of the facilitators? Attached hereby. Let's have a statement on point 4. No. Which point is it? Is point 4? Point 4. Entitled Application of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Board for Virtual Meetings, as which is attached hereby. Hearing, yes, okay, good. And then on decision 5, it's recommended that we put 4 representatives of each electoral group. Thank you very much. Bangladesh is really helping at this stage. Extremely positive. Germany, followed by Pakistan, Venezuela, and Cuba. Germany, please. No, Germany, please.
Thank you very much, President. I just want to add 2 things concerning, starting with point 4.
Yes.
As the paper entitled Application of the Rules of Procedures of the Executive Board for Virtual Meetings is not an official document and did not find consensus, I think we can have, also takes note, we should say something like bearing in mind
the discussions
around
the sessions of the 6th,
bearing in mind the discussion
of the 6th special
of
session.
the 6th special session.
And take
No, this is on point 4. On point 4. Germany is suggesting on point 4.
Instead of point 4.
Instead of point 4 as it reads now.
And another one, or you?
And at the second.
No.
Okay.
I beg your pardon?
Germany is suggesting that instead of what is now, what should we put? Sorry.
I can't understand you properly.
Okay.
We say, bearing in mind.
Okay, 1 second, please, 1 second. I apologize, Germany. Now, let me, before I give back the floor to Germany, I think I got the point, but we need to put it on the screen. What I was trying to do with this text, please, was to have a text that is consensual. I was trying to avoid, as difficult as it might be, I was trying to avoid that we open the floor for amendments. And this text, as said by Ethiopia, backed by Bangladesh, I think it will be a text that will definitely not satisfy everybody because it's extremely difficult. But for the sake of consensus, we wanted to have something that we can approve in a block, because you can see that if we open the floor for amendments, really, if you really, it's not something that really you will die for, like, it's absolutely a must, because all we are doing is just to take note of something that is to recognize to a certain extent the work of the facilitators. So I'm just trying to plead to everybody that in trying to also recognize the work of the facilitators, we just take, because the table they produced, it was after elaborate work. That's all I want to take note. We are not going to be able to satisfy everybody. It is very clear, but we are trying to come to something that with all the good understanding of everybody, we give in something for the sake of our organization, please. Can we live with this, knowing that there are some weaknesses that we will improve? We're already creating an open-ended working group that will improve everything that we are doing here and produce a document that might be more appropriate for the 209 session. I will continue pleading to all of you that please, let's not do something that will make us now start editing, because that's what we are trying to avoid. Please. I'm not sure if this will be really a big deal. If we just take note of what the facilitator produced, we are already happy with the work of the facilitators. I wanted to recognize, apart from saying appreciate, I simply wanted to recognize that we took note of what they produced us. It doesn't mean we approve it, but the working group will come and something with 209. That's all, Excellency. I'm just afraid that if I already seeing the people that are raising the hand. I'm afraid if we start editing, we might bog down when we have a very important item. I really would like to plead to Germany. I know that it's difficult, but please, can we live with this until the 209? Is it too much, please?
Do I have the word?
Can we live with this the way I have proposed?
Do I have the word, President? No.
Can we live with this the way I proposed that has been approved now? And I think seeing how many people are raising the hand, I feel that most people would like to really be able to live with this and pass to the next point. Will Germany basically do it just for the sake of consensus? I would really appreciate it.
Do I have the word? President,
did you hear me?
Do I have the word?
Excellency, did you hear me?
I hear you, but
okay.
I wanted to ask whether I have the word, the floor.
Yeah, you have the floor. Sorry, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, President. Thank you for your explanation. I'm very sorry to say that I cannot agree with what you have proposed. We cannot have this point 4 as you suggested. I would not be in a position to agree on that. We cannot have the table as an official annex, as an official document.
It's fine.
My suggestion was to have a point 4, which reads, bearing in mind the discussions of the 6th special session of the Executive Board.
Okay, bearing in mind the discussion held at the 6th session, but where is the table? Where do you finish with the table?
No table. This is just my remark. I do not want to have tabled this document, which was not officially presented in an annex.
So the work of the facilitator should not be reflected. Is that the point, or no? Am I understanding you correctly? I'm understanding correctly.
We don't want to have the. We do not want to have the table as an annex.
Okay. Now I will give. Thank you, sir. I will give the floor.
No, I'm not finished. I have another thing to add, please.
Okay.
And point 3, sorry, but I have to insist. And point 3, you speak of an informal working group. The facilitators have not organized an informal working group. What we want to do is an intersessional working group to be installed. The facilitation was a different kind of work, which should lead us to a position where we could deal this 6th extraordinary session. It has not been an informal working group.
Then what should we put there? Can we put the wording? What wording can we put in there, please? What wording? What wording will you suggest?
Thank you for the work and leading and facilitating the preparation of the 6th extraordinary executive board. Just to make clear that this was not the intersessional working group which is suggested by Germany and others. And it has nothing to do with disregard with the work done by the ambassador of Switzerland and Morocco. If we don't want to have the table as an annex, because this was not an official document and it should not be integrated as an official document. There's no consensus for it.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, they have just given me a note informing of the passing away of the president of Burundi. I would like to express the condolences on behalf of the Executive Board to the family and country. Our sincere apologies. Thank you. Cuba is raising a point of order, and therefore I will give the floor to Cuba. Cuba has raised a point of order, so I give the floor to Cuba. Okay, while waiting for Cuba to be locked in, because if it's a point of order, then we should give the floor to Cuba. Now, since there are also 5 countries, we know about technology. As soon as we can get Cuba, we will interrupt. Now I give the floor to Pakistan while waiting for Cuba to come in because it's a point of order. Pakistan, please, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. First of all, let me, on behalf of my government and the people of Pakistan, convey our deepest condolences to the government and the people of Burundi on the sad passing away of their president. A sad moment indeed for all of us, so our deepest condolences. So, Mr. President, coming to this draft decision, let me commend you for your leadership and very persistent efforts to come up with a compromise text. And as we mentioned in our opening statement, I think there's a need that this session gives a very strong message that UNESCO stands united and they would like to continue their very important work of their executive board in these difficult times. So we need to adapt, of course, to these extraordinary circumstances. We don't have any particular preferences of this language. I think we can go along with this text as you have drafted or with the few amendments being proposed by different states. We will not create any difficulty to you, as you mentioned, that drafting and making amendments at this stage might create problem. But one point I would like to mention in the paragraph 5, where we are talking about a working group. If it is clear from the overall text about the aim of this working group, then it's okay. If it's not, then maybe in paragraph 5 we have to say why we are creating this working group, what is its purpose and what is its mandate. So this is our point. If you feel that this entire 5 points are giving the sense that what is the purpose and aim of this working group, then it's okay. Otherwise, we can specify in paragraph 5 why is this being created. But thank you so much. You have our support, and we will remain constructive in this regard. Thank you.
Okay. It is a very good point. What we meant by point 5, it was related to the application, the point 4. So the working group is supposed to work on the application of the rules of procedures of the executive board for virtual meeting. That's the mandate. Maybe we should include that so that people see it clearly as we read. I take note of the amendment made by Germany on point 3 and on point 4, bearing in mind the discussion held at the 6th special session of the executive board. Point. And then on point 5, we put now present its conclusion on the application of the rules of procedures of the executive board attached herein. Attached herein. If we put like this, then maybe we can delete point 4. And I would like to ask Germany that if we delete point 4 now, will you be in agreement? I want to go back to Germany for the sake of consensus. Okay, sorry. Hold on. Now, as I'm giving the floor to the other ones, there is a risk if we start negotiating. There is a big risk because we might have a lot of views. I will repeat my question now, let's say with the amendment made by Germany, which is point 4, because actually, I think, as Pakistan said, it's a bit complimentary, and for the sake of consensus, I would like to ask all the one I will give the floor now, please, let's try to see, I do not encourage that we start negotiation, please. We want something that is consensual, that's the spirit here, and let's try not to impose the other member states so that everybody can intervene. If we can live with this text, definitely is not the most satisfactory text we can have, but it is probably the text that can come close to the consensus based on the reaction I'm having on the chat and looking at the screen. I ask everybody, instead of adding in amendment, let's stop at this, if not stop, but let's try. It's a plea from my part, it's a plea, whether we can agree with it as it is now. Those that are going to raise their hand, I have Venezuela, please. Will be followed by Saint Lucia, and then France, Korea, okay. Yes. Venezuela. On whether we can start with the text and not reopen again in editing. Because if we go to the editing, we will stay here the whole day. I mean, only one delegation can, can bring many amendments, and it will not be easy. I'm just trying to help and summarize. I hope I will not be. Venezuela, please. Venezuela.
Oui, merci.
Oui, vous avez la parole, Excellence.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, please allow me to express our condolences to the people and government of Burundi following the death of their president. All of our feelings of solidarity from my delegation, my government, and my people go toward Burundi right now. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, we welcome your efforts to attempt to arrive at a consensus. We welcome this, and we think that this is the right way forward. That said, we also need to express some difficulties we have with virtual negotiations. We clearly understand what the goal is, and we don't wish to create unnecessary obstacles to reaching a consensus, but we would like to avoid what just happened and beginning negotiations online, which would certainly be very complicated. We were more at ease with the initial drafting, but in any case, please allow me just to polish paragraph 5 a little bit as you have proposed it. First of all, Mr. Chairman, if the group is open-ended, it cannot then be limited to 4 representatives. Either we have 4 representatives each electoral group, or it's open-ended. That's my first comment. I don't have any problem with it being 4 or 5, but you can't have both terms in the same sentence. And then secondly, given Article 34A of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Board, we should point out that this working group may have financial consequences to the extent it's a formal group. The interpreters are sorry, but we cannot hear the speaker properly.
Mandater les considérations de l'article 34A. Dernièrement, Monsieur le Président.
Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I think it would be good if we could. If we can't, I'll stop here. But we should, I think, specify that we're talking about 4 representatives of the members of the Executive Board, because otherwise we'll be leaving the door open to participation from all the members of the General Conference, and I don't think that was what was intended.
À ce stade, le président sur le fait que nous étions beaucoup plus confortables avec le tableau comme annexe.
We were much more comfortable with having the table as an annex, and we can accept this wording in a draft decision of this size only to facilitate consensus. If there weren't to be a consensus, we would revise our position accordingly. I hope, Mr. Chairman, that will help us further to perfect the proposal you have made, and I, of course, remain at your disposal for any further explanations on the things I have just said.
I think I want the Secretariat to clean the text and leave with the amended so that it looks clean, because I have a proposal to make. Leave it clean, because actually my proposal, which I was trying to make all the effort necessary to understand what happened and come up with something that is consensual. And I really feel that the majority of the members, they really feel that, okay, it doesn't satisfy 100%, and this is the text. So I think that this text, we should express our interest, whether we take it or maybe we leave it, unfortunately. Because if we open the floor for amendments, and by the way, we should amend things that will really improve the text. I mean, like, you know, is it 4 or 5? But let's not get into amendments, because if we allow for amendment, then I have to give the floor to everybody. And we start in point 1, and in that case, we may have to stop the point. I once again plead, can we approve this in a block, or do you want to maybe say that it's no? Because going halfway will pose a lot of difficulties. So, but anyway, we can also try to improve the text. I'm open to suggestions. I'm not closing the door. I just try to have something that will permit us to improve the text. So the objective is, in improving the text, please, let's make sure that we try not to divert and we try to have a consensus. Now, I have on my list, San Lucia has the floor, will be followed by France, Egypt, Korea, and Ethiopia. I already gave the floor to Ethiopia. Is it second time? Okay, I will give the floor to those that have not taken the floor before. And the last one on that list is Republic of Korea. Now I give to San Lucia, please. Point of order, Venezuela. Venezuela is raising a point of order. Was Cuba also? No. Venezuela, point of order. So I give the floor to Venezuela for a point of order. Venezuela. Venezuela on the point of order.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Yes, I raised a point of order because I am seeing that you are keeping the proposal that was made by German in your clean text. If we are going to add all of our states, our statements and our remarks, I prefer to keep the original draft wording that you have proposed at the very beginning. But if we are going to keep it as it was, I am okay with it. But if not, please, I have to ask you to put all my remarks on the point 5 I have already said. It is not possible to have one suggestions and not the others. We are all equals in this negotiation, Mr. Chairperson. Then, please, if you want to construct a positive consensus, we have to all be treated as equal states. Then that's my remark, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you very much.
I see the point. I know that the point of order, is Cuba point of order also? Just want to speak. Okay, good. I give to San Lucia. It will be followed by France, followed by Egypt. San Lucia, you have the floor, please. Is San Lucia in? Is she connected? She's connected, okay. Just
Yes,
to...
thank you.
Okay, you have the floor, please.
Yes, the Chair. Don't worry, I do not intend to make any amendment. It is just to say that for us, what is presented now with the amendment of Germany is no longer a consensus text. The consensus text is a bridge between the positions of all as much as possible. Of course, this is a minimum for us too. And we were not very excited about creating a working group, but we are accepting it. But we will not accept any text that will not at least take note of the table, the annex that is in the facilitator text. No way. For us, it will be a non-starter, and please don't try to change the language and put the attached or bearing in mind the discussion. Impossible. If you want a consensus, it can't be based on the position of a group of countries. This is exactly what they wanted since the beginning. It means that we have not negotiated, and it means that the position of some is more important than the positions of others. A consensus is a balance between the two. So we can go along with your text, and I see that you're not even listening to me. We can go along with your text if item 4 remains as it is, non-amended. Thank you.
I want to ask the Secretariat to put my initial text with the improvement on item 5, because item 5 is not a modification. The one that I had before, and because I put 4 or 5, we will just put 4 representative. While I'm waiting for my text, initial text, I will give the floor to France. Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much for your proposals, sir. We're making progress here. It's quite remarkable. Thanks to all colleagues for their commitment to this discussion. We agree that we cannot negotiate online, but it is true that all this needs to reflect reality in certain ways, and we consider that the German proposal reflected reality more than taking note, but okay, as we've said, there won't be negotiations online. In that context, we can play the game, but there is one error, I think, which is a factual, material error. In points 1 and 2 for the time being, we're saying, having examined the document, XEX2, we are forgetting to add the addenda. The addendum is called 6XEX2 add. So we would need to say, having examined the documents 6XEX2 and 6XEX2 add. And we would need to say it both in point 1 and point 2. Those are the points pertaining to the conduct of an online meeting, etc., etc. But we would need to cite both of the documents I have named to be entirely rigorous and consistent with everything we have done all day today.
I go to the first item 1 on my proposal that I made before as a conclusion. Having examined document, we should add the document we received from the Secretariat, which is the addendum on this one. Okay, that's the first thing, just to be factual. Is that clear? Now, we come down. I'm clarifying so that we all know what text are we working on. Also text note, and then come down on point 5, please. There, stop. I think attached herewith should go on paragraph 4. You put it either in parentheses or at the end, because on the document application of the rules should be attached here. Yeah. I ask for excuse for so that we can have a text that is, we know what we're talking about. Okay, and then on the text on 5, that should present its conclusion on the table. Okay, we can repeat it. It's referred to paragraph 4. Is Secretariat following me so that we can have a clean text? Okay. Is that okay now? The Secretariat will ask you to read it after. Is that okay? Now go back to paragraph 1. I will ask all the board members that we listen to the Secretary so that we know exactly, Secretariat, so that we know exactly what are we talking about. This is the text that I propose. Yes, no, we just only, I think on 1, 2, and 3, I didn't see any. Read it again, please, for the benefit of everybody. From paragraph 1, having examined, so that we all really think, we understand that we are working on the same text, which is the one that I have proposed, and this is the one I'm going to put for consideration.
Proposed decision is as follows. Paragraph 1, having examined document 6X, EX2, and add. Paragraph 2, takes note of the points pertaining to the modalities for the conduct of an online meeting as described herein. Paragraph 3, expresses his appreciation to His Excellency Mr. Martin Michelet, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of Switzerland to UNESCO, and His Excellency Mr. Samir Abdare, Ambassador and Permanent Delegate of Morocco, for their work in leading and facilitating the informal working group of the Executive Board with a view to ensure consensual decisions on 2 agenda items of the 6th special session. Item 2, methods of work of the Executive Board under confinement, and item 3, impact of COVID-19 on UNESCO's programs and activities. Paragraph 4 also takes note of the table produced by the facilitators entitled Application of the Rules of Procedure of the Executive Board for Virtual Meetings, attached herein. Paragraph 5 decides to create an open-ended working group of the Executive Board composed of 4 representatives of each electoral group that should present its conclusions on the table application of the rules of procedure of the Executive Board for virtual meetings attached herein at the 209th session of the Executive Board. Thank you.
Please delete the attached herein on paragraph 5. We already have it on paragraph 4. Please. No, you just delete that. Okay. Now, okay. This is the text that after a lot of work we have prepared as a consensus. At this stage, frankly speaking, we cannot open, after listening to all the discussion, I really do not recommend that we open for amendment. We should try to give in, and nobody will be 100% satisfied. Let's try to approve it, or if we want, we reject it. It's up to your decision, but amending the text will not give us the time to do anything. So, when people are intervening, please let's intervene, unless if there is really something that, is precision, is different. But any amendment substantial at this stage is a bit too late. If you refuse it or you accept it, I tried my best, because I think that we are very close to consensus, and on that point I very much thank the delegation of France. We have seen how much she has already given for the sake of consensus. For me, really is very touching. I appreciate, the same way I appreciate all the delegations, but this is how we can move into consensus. But nobody should think that we have to do everything one way or the other. We're trying to reach a consensus. Okay, I give the floor to Germany. Is it Germany now? Okay. No, Germany already. Is it a point of order? Secretariat? Who? France is asking for a point of order. France. I think France is asking a point of order. That's what I understand from the Secretariat. Can France raise their hand so that we can give you the point of order? Yes, okay, now you have France. France?
Paragraphe 5.
Yes, Chairperson, in paragraph 5, I'd just like to indicate that the informal working group doesn't exist. Yes, we thank the ambassadors of Morocco and Switzerland for their facilitation. So the words groupe de travail should not appear there in paragraph 3. And then I'm just sorry, Your Excellency. I'd like to make sure that we have this on the screen.
Can you put that so that I know what, before she goes to the next point, please? Est-ce qu'on a ce qu'elle vient d'être proposé? C'est pas.
So I don't consider that to be an amendment. I think it's a specification. But your second point, Your Excellency, second point, in the English version of paragraph 5, well, in fact, the two language versions don't say the same thing, because in the English version, you talk about 4 representatives of each electoral group that should present its conclusions on the table, etc. So in paragraph 5, there is this concept of conclusions about the table, whereas in French it says conclusions as to the application. So for me, the French version of paragraph 5 is the right one, whereas the English version should be brought in line with the French. So, Your Excellency, we have taken note of that. So you accept the French language version of paragraph 5? Yes.
Oui, je vais demander qu'on lise le paragraphe français.
I will ask for 5 to be read out so that we have the right text. So paragraph 5 decides to create an open-ended working group composed of 4 or, no, it's just 4, we don't need the or 5, of 4 representatives of each electoral group that should present its conclusions on the application of the rules of procedure of the Executive Board at the 209th session of the Executive Board.
Qui devra présenter en français, c'est pas maintenant c'est bon.
Now we have it, yes. The way it stands at present, I think, is right. So I think the French version is correct, but in English?
Right. Open-ended, okay.
Pas corrigé encore en anglais.
No, it's not correct in English, says the French delegate, because we have application of the table, application of the rules of procedure.
Conclusions on the application of the rules of procedures in case of virtual meeting of the 209th. Il faut juste enlever la référence au tableau.
Okay, for precision, I think,
Yes, we just need to delete the reference to the table in 5.
Then it cannot be 4. So maybe we should say create a working group of the Executive Board composed of. So we take out open-ended, because both of them are contradictory. And based on what has been clarified by the French delegation, I think we have the text now, is it? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Excellence.
Oh, thank you very much, Your Excellency.
So, this type of precision is what we're looking for now, but we cannot open the floor at this stage for amendment. Either we try to live with this text or we don't live with it. But I feel that there is a consensus. Let's go very quickly. Bangladesh, please, you have the floor. I really want to, I have on the list, and I will stop there. I have Korea, Albania, Germany again. No, I already gave the floor to Germany. I think there is a mistake here. Jordan, Turkey. I want to give the floor to those that have not taken the floor. Oh, no. No, Turkey, yes. We haven't given the floor to Turkey. Delegation of San Lucia, we already gave the floor. Cuba, have we given the floor to Cuba? No. Bangladesh again, and Russia. Now, may I take 1 second, please? I think, who is now on the floor, taking the floor? Albania? Korea. Korea, you have the floor. Since we see you now, please take the floor. Korea? We cannot hear. Micro?
Can you hear?
Now, yes, please.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment is point 5. I would like to propose an amendment, a working group composed of member states of executive board. I believe executive board members should participate in the working group on an equal footing, and we are very close to the consensus with very advanced text of the facilitators. And then this document is a very important one concerning rules of procedure. So I hope amend that point 5 as a working group of member states.
What is the
yes.
what is the precision is being made on point 5? What is the precision?
Decide to create a working group composed of member states of the executive board.
Yeah, that's what it was supposed to be doing. Okay, now those that I'm giving the floor is not for comments, please. This is not for comments. It's either we improve the text for precision, like have been done by Korea now, or the France, just to improve the text, yes. Amend the text, no, because we will have to decide whether we accept it or we don't accept it. But we are not going to accept at this stage amendments. We will have to decide whether we accept the text as proposed, knowing that it's not perfect. So I will give the floor, please, for editorial purposes so that you can see whether we can improve the text. But please don't, no, it's not for amendments. I give the floor to Albania, please. Albania?
Very briefly. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Many comments I wanted to make have already been made. They're in paragraph 5. The last point that is outstanding for me has to do with paragraph 4. Are we in the process of giving an official status to a document that was not official? Can we really put the two at the same level, the document of the Secretariat and a document that was produced informally? And are we not also limiting the terms of reference of the working group if we do that? No, not at all. The working group will revise everything and they'll do the work on that. Thank you very much. But at this stage, we can't really get into the drafting of the text.
Or concluding the remarks. So, Germany, you have the floor. I'm not sure if it's a repetition. Germany?
This looks much nicer than Germany above me, but I would like to take the floor. I just want to raise exactly the same question as the distinguished ambassador of Albania just asked. Do we make out of the application of the rules procedures an official document? If you say yes to this question, I can't accept it. So at least we have to delete the attached herein at paragraph 4 and the last two words. Then it's okay for me. And if I might suggest in point 3, you have said Martin Michelin, ambassador to UNESCO, but you haven't said the ambassador of Morocco to UNESCO. So, yeah, it is written in. I see, sorry. So I'm fine with that.
The ambassador to UNESCO is a precision. The change on point 4.
No, it's fine. It's already done. It's already done.
Okay, that is a precision. We can include it, but at this stage, I have already said we cannot include substantial changes. We'll have to decide at the end, but we cannot start. Can you please put attached herein, please? At this stage, I'm not going to allow for substantial changes because we will have to decide whether we take the text or we don't take it. So I give floor to the Jordan, please. Sorry, Cuba. Cuba was before. I'm sorry, Cuba was before.
Sorry, President. May I just say?
Yes.
I had
Germany.
a question, and
yes,
the question
Germany.
was clear, and it was the question raised by the ambassador of Albania. And I'm asking the very same question. I cannot live with a sentence attached herein, because this is not an official document. We can take it as a base for discussions, as we said in point 5, but we cannot make it an official document by attaching it to the decision. Please take it away.
Sir, it is up to the executive board. I did my best to summarize what I feel that comes from the board. Whatever the board will say is up to the board. If you want to go along with this consensus, that's fine. If you don't want to go along with it, but what we cannot do is to start doing amendments. Because if we do amendment, I will have the list full of many other countries. And at this stage, it's not practical. So we have taken note of your comment. I will give the floor to the other one and I will come back.
Please take note of my comment.
Yes.
I cannot live with
I
this,
want the Secretariat to take note
point 4.
of what has been said by Germany. So it's well taken. Then Jordan, please, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Followed by Turkey and Bangladesh. Cuba was before. Where is Cuba? She's connected. I think Cuba is before. If she's there, please, we will wait for a while. Can Cuba try to talk? Because we think you are on, but we cannot hear you. It's coming.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Do you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Yes, it's not easy for us to work under these conditions. We tried to take the floor on a number of occasions, and it's really difficult for us. And that's being in Paris. Imagine what it would be like if we were in Havana. But we're in favor of the consensus, of course, and so there's no reason to limit the membership of the working group. We're in favor of consensus, and in order to move forward, this, I think, is an example of the sort of thing that can happen in the future if we work virtually with all of the points to be dealt with by the Executive Board. But I'd just like to note that we're in favor of an open-ended working group without any limitation. We're in favor of a consensus, of course, but we want an open-ended working group. Thank you very much for the spirit of consensus. That's not easy, I know, but we thank you very much. Jordan has the floor.
Yes. Yes. Do you hear me, Mr. Chair?
You have the floor. Again, for everybody else,
Yes?
for editorial comments, please. Yes, you have the floor, Excellency.
Mr. Chair,
you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
I had a comment in mind on paragraph 5.
Yes.
But I'm fine with it now.
Oh, thank
okay
you very much. Thank you very much, sir. I very much appreciate it. Turkey?
Thank you.
Turkey, any editorial comment, not substantial comment at this stage? Turkey? Is Turkey coming? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we asked for the floor a few time ago. Therefore, I want to state our question. We are a little bit confused. We would like to ask, do we have now online negotiations? Because we have been hearing during the special session that member states do not agree with online negotiations. But now we have also observed that amendments by some member states were made, and now you told us that amendments are not accepted. We observed that some member states get the right to make amendments, and other member states the same right is not given to other member states. In order to define our position, we need a clarification. Do we take the text which you have given to us, proposed to us at the very beginning, or are we going to talk on this text, especially in paragraph 5, we see amendments. Are we going to discuss on this text? And if yes, why can some member states make amendments and others not? We need clarification, Mr. Chairperson.
Yes, I will clarify. Actually, the text that I made, I recognize that there were some need to clarify some aspect. For me, these are not amendments, but they go in line with what I have said. For example, on my text, I say open-ended, composed of 5 or 6 member states. There is clearly a contradiction between open-ended and 4 and 5. So if a member state said, let's clarify one of these two, it's a very pertinent comment that will reinforce my text. Another point can be, for instance, we take note of the document. That's what I said. If we have 2 documents, and in my note I just mentioned one, if a member state reminds me that there is a second document, for me it's really not a substantial comment because it reinforces what I say. The text that we have now on the screen, it reflects what I had in mind, just adjusting. And I said at this stage, we cannot open the floor for discussion. It's too late. So that's why many member states, although they do have different views, they are basically accepting for the sake of consensus, for whom I'm very much appreciative. So if that reply to your question, I will still give the floor, not for substantial changes, but for editorial changes that will reinforce the text that I put initially. Is that okay, or can we move on, or you want to say something?
We still cannot understand it, especially with paragraph 5. Member states were given the right to make amendments. If we give the right to one member state, we have to give it to them all. That's our understanding, okay. Mr. Chairperson.
What is your proposal? What is your proposal in 5? Sorry. What is your proposal on 5, so that we can really? What is the editorial text you would like to introduce on 5, if any?
Our question is a matter of principle, Mr. Chairperson. We need clarification on the fact whether we can amend the text, yes or no, because we have seen other member states could amend the text. Now, you told us that no more amendments are allowed. That's what we need to understand.
Excellency, I think I have explained. I don't know, maybe my explanation is not correct, but I have tried to explain. Now I'm asking you, do you have any editorial, not amendment, suggestion you may make so that I can accept it as part of my document. I have given you example of the kind of situation where I think that I should accept. I cannot say on the one hand open-ended and say 5. If you correct me on that, I stand to be corrected. But if your editorial or change is substantial, no, we are not accepting amendment, but we're accepting improvement. So if you agree that we can try to conclude, because I still have 4 member states.
Then we would like to have at least paragraph 5, in paragraph 5, an open-ended working group, and not the new version. Because this was also the initial version which you have proposed to us.
Based on what you are saying, if we put, can we write, Secretariat, please? Secretariat, can we put informal, what is it? Informal working group. Yeah, I think maybe it can address a bit what, and it will clarify better my text. Okay, informal working group. I think that, thank you for the Turkey.
No, it was the open-ended working group.
You are suggesting that we leave the open-ended? Is that your proposal?
Yes.
Ah,
yes.
Okay. For me, it's fine, frankly speaking. It's not a change. It's within what I said. It's either, if you put open-ended, then I should take out 4. If you put 4, then I should put open-ended. The problem with open-ended is that you don't know, because with 4, you can ask from each electoral group that we need. What about putting at least 4? Okay, let's put at least 4. Let me see, what is that thing? Composed of at least. Okay. Will this satisfy your concern, Turkey, if you put at least?
No, we understand. If we have an open-ended working group, we have no limitation on the numbers of participants. If we have a limitation on the numbers, it should be an open-ended working group.
But
so we would like to see, if we amend, we would like to see if an open-ended working group and not limited to 4 or 5 representatives.
But at least, if we say at least, I think that is not limited. At least means from 4 up. That's the way I understand it. Will that be okay so that we can move forward, please?
Open-ended working group has, in our understanding, no limitations concerning the numbers of the participants.
Okay, fine. I think that is within what I propose, and it's not a substantial change. Let's put open-ended. I will just limit to what is my proposal, but I will not accept new amendment. Let's put open-ended, but in that case, you take out 4. So don't forget my informal, open-ended working group composed. No, it cannot be composed. Yeah. Yes, it's okay now. It's still within what I propose, so it's not going off. After Turkey, I have 5 member states, and please, I will close there. I will close there. I have Bangladesh, Russia, St. Lucia, Egypt, and Tunisia. Please, only very brief on something that is only editorial. I cannot accept at this stage any substantial change. Bangladesh, you have the floor, please. Is Bangladesh coming?
Am I being heard? I think so.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think the way we are going around is halfway through. Neither we are sticking to your position that we accept whatever text you have suggested, neither are we allowing every member state to make the amendment. Even the editorial changes are the amendment. So technically, we are into this exercise, first of all. Secondly, I would also echo the two comments of the distinguished ambassador of Pakistan and this distinguished ambassador of Republic of Korea. The point made on paragraph 5 by ROK, both the comments were on that. First of all, we think that we were in favor of a limited working group, because that would be efficient way of working. we have a very little time from now till the 209 session. And if we have an open-ended working group, we would see a lot of discussion taking place, lot of time required. A concentrated, efficient way of working would be to have a slimmer working group and concentrating, giving them this short time frame. So we will still prefer to have a 4-member working group per electoral group of the executive board. The suggestion was from the ROK that we have 4 members of the executive board from each electoral group. That would have taken care in terms of the text. Secondly, so if I can read it in dictation speed, perhaps this will be basically linguistic change, no substantive change. Okay.
Okay, we're open for that. Go ahead, sir.
If I may.
If it's linguistic, go ahead.
Composed of, you see, it will make sense. Composed of 4 members of the executive board from each electoral group. Meaning the executive board members from each electoral group will nominate 4 members to this working group. It will be a formal working group, not an informal working group, Mr. Chair. And on second point, with regard to conclusion, the better word could be recommendation. I think I'm lost. Am I connected again? I think so.
We can hear you. I'm just trying to see where to write. Okay.
Our suggestion would be now. It would be decides to create a working group.
Yes. Okay.
Composed of 4 members of the executive board.
Yes.
From each electoral group that should present.
Yes.
Its recommendation.
Yes.
Instead of conclusion,
yes,
present its recommendation on the working method of the virtual session and then that will follow.
Thank you very much. Now
to recommend
very
working
clear.
Methods of, I think.
Hearing you, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Bangladesh, go ahead.
Okay, from each electoral group that, okay, thank you. That from each electoral group that should present its recommendation on the working method of a virtual session of the executive board, including I can't see the text on the screen. If it can be lifted a little bit up. Okay, thank you. From each electoral group that should present its recommendation on the working methods of a virtual session of the executive group, including on the application, and the rest remains same. On the application of the rules of procedure of the executive board. Here we can delete the word for the virtual meetings.
I'm trying to make sure that it doesn't change
just
what
for
I said
the elegance
before.
Of the text.
I'm trying to make sure that it's exactly the same text, but it was much improved earlier. I don't know if it's the last part. I will look at the last part because I cannot accept amendment now. Let me just read it. Secretariat, please, can you read it to make sure, but because I cannot accept amendments. But editorial correction, yes, paragraph 5 only. Can you read 5? Can you read 5? No, not open-ended. It's informal working group.
This paragraph 5 decides to create an informal working group composed of 4 members of the executive board from each electoral group that should present its recommendations on the working methods of a virtual session of the executive board, including on the application of the rules of procedure of the executive board at the 209th session of the executive board.
This is a repetition. It doesn't add much. Where we're saying working methods and then the application of the rules of procedure. No, there's a repetition. No, there's a repetition here.
The rules of procedure, it is in its entirety.
Including on the application of the rules of procedure of executive board. Huh?
The rules of procedures are of the executive board. So that's a term.
Okay.
Of its entirety.
For me,
rules of procedure of the executive board.
Okay. For me, that is a much better language in English, and it does not imply additions. So on that basis, I don't want to add any addition, but it's a correct text. So we will keep it like this. If anybody detects that it's an addition, we have to take it back, because that's what I have said. But for me, it's a better language in terms of the way it is written. In English, I don't know about French one, but English is correct. Now, quickly, I have Russia, please, Russia. I accept it on the basis that it doesn't modify anything what I said before. Russia?
I would like to repeat that we cannot accept the principle take it or leave it. And secondly, we cannot understand why you give to some countries the right to amend the text and deny this right to other countries. And secondly, we have the same concerns as the delegation of Turkey. We fail to understand some important points about the paragraph 5, the working group. First of all, we have suggested at the early stages of our work, concretely to the facilitators, он даже не слушает меня, he doesn't listen to me. We suggested to the facilitators that to define the mandate of the group and its working methods, because we don't know what would be the decision-making process, how decisions are going to be taken by majority, by vote, by consensus. Nothing is clear. Secondly, there is a problem that the working group, if it is open-ended, then it will overlap the preparatory group, which is convened this week. What is the difference between the two groups? And the last question, which is unclear for us, and maybe we fail to understand something. As far as we understand from your text, the working group will support on both tables suggested by facilitators and by the Secretariat. So the question is, which one is valid? If it will bring about some difficulties for the working group. The working group has to have the clear basis for its work. And here it needs some clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. In order not to go far, I want to make sure that my text is back on the screen the way it is, and Russia is right. As I said when I was listening to Bangladesh, that so long as it doesn't change my text, so let's try to put my text back, because we should not negotiate at this stage. Decide, Secretariat, to create an informal working group. Delete the other one. Delete it, please. Delete it. Okay. Informal working group composed of 4 members of the executive board. Delete the rest, the other one. It will begin from each. Okay. From each electoral group that should present its delete conclusion, recommendations on the working methods of a virtual session of the executive board. Delete the whole thing is to the 209 session, I think. That's what it was. After the executive board. The working methods of a virtual session of the executive board to the 209 session. That was my original text. Including is a new addition, and I don't really know what it means. I want to maintain the text that I had. Okay, I apologize. Russia was, I think, right. I want to maintain the text because while I'm tempted to try to improve the text, the risk is that I may introduce new elements and open the floor. Now, I give the floor now to Egypt, followed by Tunisia and Albania. Egypt. Sorry, there is another point of clarification that the Russian Federation asked, which is on the tables. We know that the documents submitted by the Secretary are the initial document. Then the facilitators, they continue working, and we took note of what they did. So I think for me, it's clear that we have to state the fact, and the fact is that we started working from the document submitted by the Secretariat. Did I give the floor to Albania? Who did I give the floor now? Who is next? Egypt. Egypt, you have the floor, please. Please, let's be brief because I want to close this. It's about 6 o'clock. They still have Tunisia and Albania. Egypt, please.
Thank you, Chair, and let me start by presenting our most sincere condolences to the people and the government of Burundi. Mr. Chair, I will start by asking a question concerning the addendum, because it is dated on the 5th of June, so my question is very specific. Was it distributed to member states?
For me, there is one addendum that I recognize. Can I see the Secretary, the document? What addendum are we talking about? There is an addendum that was submitted by the document. Can the Secretary show me which one? I had in mind one first addendum, not two. There is one that came when the initial text was distributed. Which one is this one? This one, what is, I know there is another table 1 to the initial document.
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm talking about the addendum dated 5th of July, 5th of June, I'm sorry.
I'm surprised to learn about this addendum also now, but...
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
But I will proceed with your permission.
Yes.
And I have to congratulate you on your courage. I admire really your courage, your stamina, your creativity, all the efforts you've been trying to make, your goodwill, and your efforts to approve a decision, to get a decision approved. It would be definitely a real success for all of us, and specifically for you more than anybody else, Mr. Chair. But I believe that the quality of our work is really important. We have to ask ourselves, would what we are working on would lead us, would be the mean to the end we wish? This is a very important question. Do you think that we will be solving all of our problems with this decision? If so, we will be fully supportive, but we don't see how. And we don't see the terms of reference of the working group, how it will meet, online or not, who will chair it. And I think that we need to make sure that all of this is there. I believe we're working on a formal decision, and we're talking about an informal working group. I fail also to see the reason behind having an informal working group in a formal decision, but maybe you would be able to give us an explanation on that. I have to congratulate you also on the fact that we are now being able to negotiate online, which is something that is good. You proved to us that it is possible, with challenges, of course. But as said by Turkey and by Russia, Mr. Chairman, it will be very difficult to achieve consensus on your own. We will have to be all together on board. And what is for sure is that maximalist positions will definitely lead to maximalist positions on the other hand. And the essence, the crux of the matter is concerning the will. We have been talking for weeks and months to have this session that we finally are having. The question you need to ask yourself and to ask everybody is, are we having enough will to do what is acceptable to all? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last speaker is Albania. Thank you, Your Excellency. Albania? Albania, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And being the last, I have to be really short. And again, I admire your patience and the efforts that you've made. And of course, we want to facilitate your work all the time. And I hope that that's what we have been doing so far. But again, I asked a question which was also asked by Russia for clarity. So because we have two tables. And again, I insist, not because I'm stubborn, but just want to know and to have clarity. So that in the point 4, we still are not convinced that it's the right way to give equal status, legal status to a document that was never formally presented. But again, we will not stand we will not be really blocking anything. But if you want to be true to your word, as you said that you will never accept any major substantial amendment on the text that you initially proposed, I think the wording attached herein has been added later on. So I just want you to recognize that. And again, my point remains that we are giving a formal status to an informal document that was never presented as such. Thank you.
Thank you. The document art, I really I apologize because that document art on all above, when I was saying yes, I assumed that is one of the tables, but this is an art that is new, frankly speaking. But on the positive side, I think that we are going to have a working group that we will try to reflect and help the working group that will try to come up with, work with all these tables and any other table they may find. And by the way, the Secretariat will be included here. I hope it's clear that on point 5, for working group, I don't know if we can assume that it's implicit or we should write something. The Secretariat is included. So for me, it's given, but if any member state thinks that we should put a text, it will be better to put a text. Of course, for me, I assume that we will work with the legal advisor in trying to come up with the final text. So for me, thank you very much for all the comments. At this stage, it's a bit late. It's 6 o'clock. Now I have to ask you a question. This is the text that we have. We all have seen it, a lot of work. I would like to ask you if you can give me the permission to approve this text so that we can move to the next item in the agenda. We cannot accept at this stage any other comment. We have taken note of the comments, strong comments made by different delegations, but we also have seen the maturity of the whole organization in trying to come up to something that we can all agree on. This is a consensual text. If any country wants to object to it, because either we take this text collectively or we object it. There cannot be a middle ground at this stage. If there is a country that is trying to object to it, fine, they can raise their hand, but I hope they will permit us now to be able to adopt the text. Should any country really insist on that, raise a point of order. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to thanking you, I don't know how much, in the adoption of this text. I don't know if Bangladesh is raising the hand to intervene or something. I don't know if Bangladesh is raising the hand because I was trying to approve the text. I see the hand. I see Bangladesh, Egypt. Okay. Bangladesh and Egypt, let's see what we can listen to you. Hopefully you will bring us some wisdom to try to approve as you all of you are characterized. I think I gave the floor to Bangladesh, followed by Egypt. Bangladesh?
Am I being heard? Yes,
yes.
It seems so. Mr. Chair, again on point 5, para 5, we will insist not to have informal working group, whatever be the way that you present it in this text. We would prefer to have simply a working group, not an informal working group. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because that was in your original proposition. We cannot have an informal working group to assist a formal process. But here we would insist that we have a formal working group. We do not need to mention it as a formal. It would be a formal if you don't mention informal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, at this stage, I would like to, so that we have to make sure that we are respecting the regulations, I would like to ask the legal advisor on the paragraph 5, whether it makes it a difference to call formal or informal. What terminology the legal advisor would recommend to us on that, in that decision? Is it, do we put formal or do we leave informal? Legal advisor, just for clarification on this. Because we are trying to avoid some cost implication on this decision. Yes, legal advisor is there. We are trying to avoid additional cost.
Mr. Chair, the difference between an informal working group and a formal working group is that the formal working group would apply the rules of procedure of the board and would actually probably require that interpretation be given. That you should check this with the Secretariat, whether that would imply financial implications. An informal working group, on the other hand, would work in a more informal manner and would not require that. For whether it implies, it has financial implications, you should ask the Secretariat whether that is the case. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The reason I corrected to informal, because I received information that the formal will have some legal financial implications, and we really don't want to put the organization in that situation, because I think that with the informal, we can find a way to manage among the member states. That was the intention. So I maintain informal for now. I give the floor to Egypt, followed by Venezuela. Egypt, please.
Comment on this, but since your discussion with the legal advisor tackled this matter, I think that it is Rule 17 that has to do with the creation of temporary committees, so this executive board could decide whatever it wishes. But what I really wanted to say, Mr. Chair, is that Egypt will not be stopping a consensus. We think that UNESCO belongs to all of us, and we are all wishing to see UNESCO working, achieving its results, doing the maximum it can do. We believe that if we adopt this decision, and we don't mind at all adopting it, will not lead us to this. So I just wanted to put this on record and to tell you that I will be reminding you in a very near future that this decision didn't lead to the results. It is not the mean to the end we wish, but we are in your hands and we will follow whatever you will say with all the dear colleagues and members of the board. Thank you, Chair.
I really thank Egypt. I really thank Egypt for this really spirit of cooperation and all the member states, because I know that it's not easy. So I will give the floor now to Ethiopia. It's the last one, and then I will not give the floor again. We'll have to decide.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and I would like to congratulate you and this compromise in the spirit of consensus. I do not agree with my Egyptian friend that this is an effective decision. I think effectiveness comes out of consensus and compromise, and this does it. So this would lay the foundation, I think, for us to work on a document on the working methods that is help us not only for next sessions, but also for the future. So thank you, and thank you to the Council.
Dear friends, excellencies, everybody, we have now come to the conclusion, to the end of the list of speakers on this item. The decision is on the screen. We have discussed it, and now I'm asking for your permission to approve this decision. Only those that will raise their hand for motion of order could be authorized. I give few seconds. If you don't see any hand, I will be more than pleased. I already leave my, you can see how impatient I am to hit this. I see no objection. Adopted. Thank you very much. I really appreciate, and I know that this has been a very difficult, but as always, we have proven that UNESCO, when it comes to staying together, when it comes to adopting consensual decision, we always know how to do it. Thank you very much. Now we can turn to the next item, which is point 3. Can you, somebody trim this? Point 3. Impact of COVID-19 crisis on UNESCO's programs and activity. Now, I feel really uncomfortable because this is such an important item. And I don't know if we will do any justice to start a discussion now that in about 15 minutes, I will be having the problem of interpretation. I'm not really sure that this will be very fair. That's my feeling, that we start discussing this item. But I'm in your hands. Whatever you feel like, one item that we could finish is item 4. But this item is very important. Now I will need some guidance. What advice will you give? Whether we start this knowing that we cannot be reach any far, or we unfortunately have to push it for the next session of the executive board. If that's the case, I believe that the point 4 for the 209 is crucial in the sense that it shouldn't be too long, but at least we need to know that information as we listen this morning from the Secretariat, and we need to give the Secretariat the floor to respond. I really don't know what to do now with EX3, given the tremendous importance of this item. So I will, before I open the door for discussion, I would like to have some words of wisdom on guidance as to how we can proceed. I see that Argentina is raising the hand. I hope will give us some really wisdom at this stage to try to see how we can proceed with this item before I open the floor. Argentina, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. I believe you can hear me. Well, obviously, this is very important, and we all have to have a sense of what we've done or how we can act during the COVID. We will no doubt want to discuss this at length at the next session. But this document for item 3 is full of information about what we have done. So my proposal would be to set that aside until the next session. Then, of course, during intersessional periods, we could exchange different views on the document, perhaps perfect the document, perfect our understanding of it. But it is a very in-depth document, and it deserves a more in-depth analysis in order to see how we can work in the future should similar problems occur again, which I hope will not be the case. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That's very much in line with what I've been suggesting, because we have this document which has required a lot of effort by the Secretariat. The Secretariat has invested time and resources in this. This is eagerly awaited by member states, so I don't think it would be fair to try to examine the document, and Argentina seems to be agreeing with me. I mean, just to devote 20, 30 minutes to such a weighty, important document would not be right. So if there are no further requests for the floor, I'll suggest that we simply take note of this document on this occasion and put it aside for in-depth examination at a subsequent session.
Takes note of this document and what should we say, recommends that it be examined. Somebody correct me with the language, those experts we have in the board, in the next 209 session of the executive board. So we need to have a text. Somebody can send us a text while we are moving, that it can be correct, 1 or 2 lines, so that we know that we did not examine this document here, but we asking the Secretariat to bring it to the next session. On that text, let's try to limit only to 2 lines, not what we're asking for, not a petition or anything. It's just to take note of the fact that we did not examine, and we are bringing to next executive board. In the next few minutes, I will come with a text to do it. I noticed that I take it the silence means that everybody seems to agree that we should better examine this document at 209 session. Now I would like to come back, if this is an agreement, now I am proposing to move into the next item, item 4. The fact that I don't see hands, for me, it means that you agree with that decision. But we have to put it on the screen, 2 lines. Secretary just draft 2 lines, I will approve it. While we're waiting for that decision, and with your permission, I would like to now come back to the item that has been presented, I think before we break for lunch, by the Director General and the Secretariat completed. I asked a question. I would like to give the floor now to the Secretariat to give us some initial reaction, and then immediately I will open the floor for those that want to intervene. I see that the ADG administration is already with us. Can you please take from what we left this morning? ADG administration, you have the floor, please. The Secretariat.
Hello, thank you very much, Chair. Yes, and thank you for the comments earlier on today. So I just wanted to add a few clarifications based on the comments that have come up during the course of the discussions. This document, this information document, is a proposal. It's a proposal that we have put forward based on the assessment of the current sanitary situation. Of course, it is for the executive board to decide exactly which modality it wishes to adopt, whether or not to take this proposal forward or not. To clarify as well that in the proposal, in order to limit the numbers of people who would be physically present in the premises and of course in any one room, then the proposal is that it would be 1 delegate per delegation, one representative per delegation. This then would enable for the EB members and for the observers to be accommodated within the premises. There would be, in addition, some limited space for observers to attend via the other meetings, and in the document we have set out the capacities that would be possible to accommodate. The point has also been raised about travel and about the travel restrictions. And, you know, I think from what we are all reading and hearing, it's very likely that the travel situation is going to continue to be compromised really at least until the end of this year. We're not in a normal situation. We will not be in a normal travel situation for some time. Now, many other, as you know, many other UN organizations have been grappling with this problem. The member states of other UN agencies, specialized agencies, the UN itself, both in Geneva and in New York. And I really want to emphasize that very, very few organizations have yet managed to find a solution for member states to properly meet. UN office in Geneva, the Director General there had very recently, towards the end of May, issued detailed statements to the member states about the arrangements which would be followed in Geneva. They're rather similar to what we're proposing here, similarly in New York. And in both of these locations, the same technology that UNESCO is using and will be fully implementing to allow 6-language remote interpretation. It's the same situation in these other locations, which is not yet installed. So it's really, I think, to emphasize to you that, I think, the board is doing a great job in trying to work out the best way forward. And you're not alone. I mean, the other member states and other organizations are facing very much the same difficulties right now. The other thing that I would mention, and this is really also building on the experience of WHO, which is an organization which, as you know, conducted a 2-day remote meeting with 6 languages. That meeting was in effect very similar to this special session. I mean, it was conducted looking at the COVID response and also procedures of work. It was not covering any of the normal substantive items that you would expect or that were on the agenda for the World Health Assembly. And one thing that they did, which could be also for consideration by the executive board, Mr. Chair, is to use, for those members who could not attend in person, and particularly at a senior level, recorded statements from capitals. So there were a number of recorded statements that were made at that session, and perhaps the board might wish to consider that, given that then other individuals could be designated to attend in person in Paris, those based in Paris. So I hope that's answered some of the questions. I'm happy to try and respond to a bit more, but I acknowledge as well that this is an incredibly difficult question, and we want to do everything we can to support the board and trying to make things work for you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you very much. Now I would like to ask the delegation that wants to intervene to please raise the hand. Knowing that we are about 6:30, we have about maximum 15 minutes to go, no more. The interpreter are giving sign. But any delegation that would like to take the floor, please do so, because I will close the list. Now is the chance. If you want to take the floor, please raise your hand, because after that, I will close the list of speakers. I will give few seconds to ensure that everybody that wants to intervene on this item, they are able to do so. Then I will close the list of speakers, and then we will have to stop there. Okay, I see only 2. Last call, I see San Lucia, I see Argentina, I see Japan. Okay. With these 3, with Ethiopia, with these 4 countries, I'm now going to close the list of speakers. Now I'll read one more time the countries that I have on my list: San Lucia, Argentina, Japan, Togo, and Ethiopia. With that, the list is closed. After these 4, we will have to conclude. I thank you. Now I give the floor to San Lucia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your efforts again. I would like to thank ADG administration for all the efforts and the preparation for this 209th session. I would just want to make sure that we will be able, technically speaking, to have people intervene from the capital, or at least follow from the capital, and be able to speak if they wish to speak, because we know, as he said, and he's right, that traveling to France is going to be difficult at the end of June. So we have to make sure that, technically speaking, we are going to be ready for this. And my question is concerning the number of people in room 1. I really have to say I fail to understand why is it going to be just one person per delegation in room 1. It's a huge room, and there's the mezzanine also in room 1, and I think we can easily put at least 2 persons per delegation in this room, especially that we know already that this is going to be a problem for some delegations. So I would like ADG administration to reflect on this. I think the room allows it, really. And observers, of course, need to be present. They can sit in the mezzanine or other rooms. We have to make sure that the maximum of rooms are available for the executive board, and we have to make sure that nothing else is planned at the same time, because we have to make sure that everybody's going to be able to attend in all security and use all the rooms we have at our disposal in Fontenoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Argentina, you have the floor, please.
Oui, c'est un document d'information. Il y a beaucoup de choses à dire.
We have lost Argentina. While we are waiting to gain the time, I give the floor to Japan. Argentina is back. Okay. Vous avez la parole, Excellence, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est un document d'information.
This is an information document which is still underway, and we know it's going to be very difficult because the pandemic won't be over everywhere. Not everyone will be able to participate, but it's a way to go forward and to have some faith in the future. Dialogue is important, even if it's very, very difficult. We think that this is a good opportunity to show ourselves that we'll be able to continue. There's one other thing I wanted to say. We have a mandate already. We have a secretariat, we have a director general, and we've already had many exchanges in these exceptional circumstances. So we must have faith that we'll be able to learn from this crisis and improve our working methods afterward. The June meeting is very important, especially for us as a symbol of UNESCO's work. Even if there will be a lot of criticism and many difficulties and lots of limitations, I hope that the world of the future will not be a COVID world, but it will be a different world, and we'll have learned things from this crisis. And perhaps, if science makes a lot of progress, perhaps we'll never have this problem in our lives again. I am waiting with great impatience for COVID to be a thing of the past and a bad memory for humanity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Floor, Excellency, please.
Hello, can I speak now?
Yes, Excellency, you have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express our appreciation for the efforts the Secretariat has made to make this meeting possible. So I would like to express my appreciation to Administration ADG for the efforts. And secondly, it is a good opportunity for us to show to the world that we are working, the executive board is working. That's a very good thing. But at the same time, we have to make special arrangements as much as possible to take care of the needs of the participants who are going to participate in the capital virtually. So it's very important to make appropriate arrangements for them. And finally, since this time, commissions and committees will have to meet. I'm sure the commissions and committees will get a smaller room, but nevertheless, there are certain items which could attract considerable attention. And those things do exist in the agenda items of the committees and commissions. And I would like to request the Secretariat to try to find good rooms for commission and committee meetings as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Professor Sedu, have the floor, please.
I'd like to thank the administration for all the information we've been given. About having a in-presence meeting for the 209th session of the board. As Japan said, we haven't heard specific information about committee meetings. Could we hear more about that? Thank you very much.
Ethiopia? Thank you. Merci.
Very much, Mr. Chair. We have the same preoccupation as Japan, St. Lucia, and also as repeated by our brother from Togo. One, we don't understand why it's not possible to have 2 members per delegation for the members of the board, and not being able to respect the distancing rules, 1.5 meters as we understand them. 2, on the commissions and the committees, they are going to be very challenging sessions with maybe much more difficult and controversial issues to deal with than what we just dealt with. And so it will be very important also to make arrangements for meetings of these committees to be held in presencia. And 3, in Africa and in my country in particular, the pandemic is now just entering the I would say the fast increase rate, and the peak is yet to come. And so we expect that travel restrictions might be a challenge for many of our countries. So there will have to be a hybrid system whereby a presential and a virtual arrangement is also there. Ask the Secretariat as well on that. But they contemplate also virtual arrangements for those that cannot travel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. I now give the floor to the Secretariat to react to the different comments and remarks made by the member states.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the comments and questions. Most of the questions really around the density of people in the room and the numbers in the room, the possibility for commissions or other meetings, and also what about people who can't travel. So the ultimate decision, of course, is for the board to decide on the modalities for this. We are putting forward here a proposal based on the current sanitary information in the host country. And we are recognizing that the COVID-19 problem has still not gone away, particularly in the Paris area. And therefore, we have to be, in putting this forward, we also have to be very vigilant in terms of numbers of people that we bring together. Now, it's not just a question of how many people physically are sitting in the room. It's also the secretariat staff that will be in the office to support the board. It's other members of delegations who will be in potentially observing. And it's then the circulation of people in the conference areas of the building. The more people that we have, the more circulation, the more that we are going to have problems in terms of being able to apply distancing. I mean, I don't wish to sound trivial, but I mean, it's also things like the toilet facilities that we have to ensure we have, proper measures in place for accessing of all facilities at all times where there could be any bottlenecks of people. So it is really put forward on the basis that the numbers per delegation be very limited. Now, in terms of the remote participation, we're putting forward this proposal on the basis that it would be fairer and easier, and I think you've all now had very good experience of a 2-day virtual meeting, and I'm glad it has been able to proceed under reasonable conditions, but it is not a straightforward process, I think, as we would all recognize. If we have a situation where some are taking part from a remote location and some are physically present in person, is that going to create any other issues? This is a question for the board. So in putting forward the suggestion that this be a entirely in-person meeting, perhaps supplemented by recorded statements, that's really our motivation for putting that forward. Now, in putting down the numbers per room and the conditions on limited numbers per delegation, this is also done on the basis that we would be able to support holding the commissions as well. This we would expect to have all commissions running. We have discussed this with the governing body secretariat, and we think we would be able to accommodate commissions. Of course, we need to look further into the details of exactly how the timetable will work. But the intention in putting this forward is that we would have a normal session, not just plenary, but with the commissions also. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody. And I think with this explanation from the Secretariat, we have come to the conclusion of this item 4. I thank the Secretariat and all the member states that intervene on this item. We know that the case of COVID and the situation may evolve, and we will continue following closely, working closely with the Secretariat, and we will have to make adjustment if need be. But for now, I think the Secretariat has explained based on the information at our disposal. So let's see how things move, and we will be in touch as we have proven that we can work under difficult circumstances. Now, there is a point that was pending on item 3. There is a proposed text that I would like to ask the Secretariat if it's already typed to put it on the screen. And I will ask the Secretariat to read that text and see if we can approve it as well concerning item 3. The Secretariat, please read the text.
The proposed text for item 3. The Executive Board, paragraph 1, takes note of document 6XEX3, paragraph 2, recommends that it be examined at its 209th session. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any objection for us to adopt this decision concerning the item EX3? I see no one raising the hand. I understand that we agree to adopt and approve this proposed draft decision? If he has seen no objection, adopted. Thank you very much. Excellencies, we have come to the conclusion of our work, and I would like to make my final remarks. And by so, I would like to ask His Excellency, the President of the General Conference, Madam Director General, distinguished members of the Executive Board, Excellencies, dear colleagues. We have now completed the work of the sixth session of the Executive Board. It has been quite a new and interesting experience for all of us. During the past 2 days, we have faced together the challenges brought on my extraordinary physical distancing measures and the ongoing uncertainty of COVID-19. These extraordinary measures to hold a special session of the board reflect the seriousness and gravity of the issue of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic before us today, which is challenging not only our global health, but also the world social fabric, economic, education, and security. We have heard from the Director General on how UNESCO has organized itself to face these challenges. I commend and congratulate you, Madam Director General, on the actions that you have taken. UNESCO's work and message to the world is necessary to reveal that disparities in education, especially in distance education, are particularly evident in low-income countries, as most of the world's students are now at home and out of the classroom due to the pandemic. Almost 40% have no internet access at home. The digital divide implies that internet and mobile network access vary greatly in middle and low-income countries. As mentioned by the Director General to the Global Education Coalition last March, while efforts to provide connectivity to all must be multiplied, continued learning cannot be limited to online means. Support must be given to other alternatives like the use of the educational television, community radio, and community broadcast in combination with SMS, and creativity in all ways of learning. These are effective communication channels between education and students when the internet connectivity is poor or not available. The message that we need to transmit is that learning never stops and that we are not leaving students nor teachers behind. So planning needs to have already begun to diagnose and treat the learning gaps that have emerged during the pandemic. We have achieved our common goals today, which was to work together virtually in the spirit of consensus to discuss the items on the agenda of this session, and also overcome the technical challenges that continue our work during a crisis period, should such situation arise in the near future. It is necessary to continue building on the point raised and the recommendations of this special session to prepare the 209th session of the Executive Board, during which we will have substantive debates on the programmatic strategy for our organization. I'm grateful to the members of the Bureau for their guidance and continued support provided to me in the organization of this special session. I also would like to thank the two facilitators who were tasked to ensure consensual decision on these items through informal consultations with member states. I'm extremely grateful to them for their commitment and dedication in leading this task. In this same vein, kindly allow me to express my gratitude to all member states for their contributions, collaboration, and commitment to reach consensus through dialogue, which is of paramount importance to defend the global interests of the organization. My thanks also go to the team of interpreters, technicians, typists for their great work, support, goodwill, and for their patience. They were particularly helpful in ensuring the smooth rollout of the work of this virtual special session. Finally, I would like to thank the Secretariat of the governing bodies for its support and their commitment to the work. Here I say from my heart, the team of the governing body have worked very hard. During the COVID crisis, we worked from home under very difficult circumstances. We work hard, we work late, we work on weekends. This I very much appreciate from the bottom of my heart, but it was a way to try to ensure that the work of the member states continues. I thank you all for your attention. As it is practiced now, I apologize because I see that the Secretary is interrupting as I'm trying to speak. You can understand that I'm already on my final speech. I very much apologize. I will look at the note and I will react to that when I finish talking. As it is practice, I really would like to appeal to the other member state that maybe we jump something. It may not be the good time to interfere now that we're having the final intervention. As it is practice, with the permission of everybody, we will now, if it is okay, I would like to turn to our dear friend, the Excellency Ambassador from the Dominican Republic, to offer us a song as we establish a practice from our retreat. And I hope that with this song, the very hard work we have gone through, the mistakes we may have made and everything, he will calm the spirits. And in case what the Secretary is trying to give me has to do with one delegation, my apologies to this delegation, but I will deal with that when we finish our session, and I will come back to that. Thank you very much, and I apologize that they didn't give me this before I start my final speech. Your Excellency, I don't know if everybody can see him. Is the camera? Yes, thank you.
Cuando todo termine, saldremos a buscar los abrazos, los besos. Los amigos serán otra vez la razón y el mejor de los premios. Cuando todo termine, le daremos valor a las cosas sencillas. Será en todo lugar donde la libertad se verá compartida. Así que al despertar, en lugar de un café, brindaremos sonrisas Y es que todo comienza cuando todo termina. Cuando todo termine, haré iglesias de un bar de tus ojos, tu mesa. Brindaremos tú y yo con el vino mejor y estaremos tan cerca que una fiesta será cada vez que una voz te diga buenos días. Las palabras serán un sonido de amor y no letras vacías. Cuando todo termine, prometo que serás mi canción favorita. Y es que todo comienza cuando todo termina. Cuando todo termine, porque va a terminar, demos gracias al cielo y lo haremos sentados en un parque los dos, con la ausencia del miedo. Cuando todo termine, porque va a terminar, estaremos desnudos, sin adornos, sin lujos, simples ciudadanos del mundo. Cuando todo termine, habremos de tomar el camino correcto. Nuestro instinto dirá que ganar, que perder, encontrar el remedio que nos haga curar el dolor de vivir sin seguir nuestros sueños. No diremos adiós sino un hasta mañana. Con tu risa me quedo. Cuando todo termine, seremos mejor. No habrá nada imposible. Nuestra vida comienza cuando todo termine. Cuando todo termine, porque va a terminar, estaremos desnudos. Será volver a nacer sin nada que esconder y sin trucos.
Thank you. With this really touching song, I really would like to, as I'm concluding, I know that I have finished my remarks. There is only one minor note when we say recommend is decide, because the executive board decides. So I would like to thank everybody. Thank you very much, really. I appreciate. And now we come to the conclusion of the 6th session of the executive board. Thank you.